To order. Now, we usually start out, and we always start out our council meetings with the singing of our national anthem, and we usually have one voice. Occasionally, there are more. Tonight, we have more. We have 75 voices, or thereabouts. It's going to be all of us. So we do not have a soloist for this evening, but we do have the music on tape and on disc, I guess, would be more digitally worse. And we will all stand and sing our national anthem at this point. Thank you very much. And if we were at a sport event, what would we do? We would Thanks to the Clerk's Division for finding that music. It was in the right pitch and one that you can actually sing to sometimes. They are a little difficult to sing to, actually, but it is a great national anthem. It's been moved by Councillor Glenn Graham that the minutes of the regular meeting held on June the 30th, 2014, and special meetings held June 30th and August the 11th, as mailed to the Mayor and Councillors, be accepted. All in favour? Opposed? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest on any of the items we're dealing with this evening? Seeing Councillor Singh.
I'm going to have to find it in the financial services report, but it's to do with the brownfield remediation program for the Momentum building or property at the corner of Victoria and King.
Okay, that's the Finance and Corporate Services?
Yes.
Item number 6.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So we have one presentation this evening, David Marskell, who is the director of the museum, and invite him to come down at this time. Council has the presentation in front of you, and for some reason there are the 3 screens on this side of the council chamber, maybe all of them, are not showing that tonight?
No, I didn't get the paperwork in on time.
All right, we have the presentation in front of us. So. Go ahead.
So thank you very much. I am not here asking for anything. I'm here to thank you. We're just coming off our 10th anniversary, and I've stood here many times and told you about the things that we do and have sought your support. You do have this deck in front of you. I'm just going to refer to it. You see the photo at the bottom of the stellar group of people who came together when we opened the museum, built the museum, reclaimed Gowdy's department store 10 years ago. On the second page, you can see how, to huge expectations, the Children's Museum opened, and there was a lot of activity and so on. When I got here on page 3, it wasn't meeting expectations, and one of the first successes we had is to bring Dr. Jane Goodall here and talk about her life and work. We brought her to the Centre in the Square for a sold-out event, and then the next couple of pages are just the eclectic number of events and exhibits that we've brought to the community. We've become more than just for children. We have more children now than when we were called a children's museum. And the bottom, I think I'm on the fourth page, bottom photo there with John Landau, the producer of Titanic and Avatar, here with Jerry Reimers and our president. That was certainly a high point for us to have secured Titanic. Again, there's Tom Thompson images, rock carvings from China. Only the second time those were allowed out of China. Other photos of children and parties and celebrations, and Bob Marley exhibit, summer camps, and our famous celebrations, Museum After Dark, High School Confidential, Pop the Gator reunion, BMO Studio 54 that we've had. Over the spring, we had a Russian accent during the Olympics, the sex dialogues in the bottom left. You can see Sue Johansson. It was a highlight of the sex dialogues. I'm the one on the left. We've worked with all sorts of Kitchener groups and organizations and schools. Merge, I'm particularly proud of because we helped mentor a number of the schools who created a music competition in the schools and then had their finals at the museum. The Brush Off has a number of artists from Kitchener, and it's something that has grown quite nicely for us. You can see over 500 students for our Medieval Week. And evenings such as an evening with Roberto Alomar. We're working hard to be Kitchener's museum. I'm sorry you're not able to see these photos. The Unwrapping Egypt exhibit is doing extremely well for us. We'll be extending it. We've partnered with the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto and have a 3,000-year-old mummy named Justine there. And again, I just wanted to thank you all, and I've sent this to each of you that was created sort of to commemorate our 10th anniversary, and it's a real snapshot of certainly of my time here. And I just wanted to thank you and hope to see you all, and best wishes in the next coming months.
Thank you very much, David. There are a couple of questions or comments here. Councillor Bravanovich.
Thanks. And David, I actually just wanted to thank you for coming in, and more importantly, thank you and your team for literally the incredible job that you've done over the last number of years at the museum. I can't count the number of times I've been there and participated in many of the events that you've highlighted, and it's been really interesting to see how you're really trying to bring very different demographics into our downtown, into the museum. I mean, you know, we get everything from junior achievement kids participating to those who come to some of your exhibits, to the women's roller derby championship participants from that were there last night, and it's just great to see that wide range of people coming there. So thanks for everything that you're doing.
Councillor Glenn Graham.
David, I can't imagine Kitchener without the museum now. It's certainly become an institution, and it's in the downtown. We talk about a safe place for everyone to come and play, and you created a playground not just for kids but adults. And in terms of the vitality and the safety and the feeling of downtown, it's added to it immensely. So I love all the events. The Brick and Beam aspect has been very much an asset in terms of events like Taco Fest, and sells out immediately, and people just love the atmosphere. It's almost like it's like a living room for everyone, but it's a playground at the same time. And your imagination and creativity and your staff's has certainly added to that. So I'm glad that we're supportive of you. Thank you for adding to our community.
Thank you.
And that's it. My personal congratulations and thanks as well. It is an exciting place, and I know that more and more people are talking about particularly the eclectic type of exhibitions that you have. Thank you, David.
Thank you all very much.
And to the board and volunteers that are in that facility as well. Okay, we're now moving into the delegation section, and I have read out some words here, and this has to do with some bylaws that we are passing tonight. Notice has been given for any member of the public to speak for or against bylaws. 2, and there are 4 items. Close a portion of Bridgeport Road. It's listed on our items in the bylaws. Close a portion of Riverbend Drive, also in our bylaws. 3rd one, close a portion of an unnamed public lane adjacent to 62 Waterloo Street. And the 4th one is close a portion of an unnamed public alley behind 320 Cortlandt Avenue. All of those will be in our bylaws tonight. Is there anyone in the audience to speak to any of those items? Anyone to speak to those items a third time? Anyone to speak to those items? Seeing none, we will move on then. The next item deals with our unfinished business, and this relates to item 8A, the Out of the Cold program. We have 2 listed delegations on the agenda, and I believe I have 1, 2, 3, 4 additional delegations this evening. So the first one is Sharon Feeney. No. In the council chamber, there is no applause except when we're applauding for our national anthem. No, there are no demonstrations of people speaking, no interaction from the audience. Thank you very much for that. Go ahead.
Good evening. Tonight we meet in response to April 14th meeting when city staff was asked to investigate options to assist the Out of the Cold Tuesday night closing. As we are all aware, 2 more nights have become an issue. First, I'd like to recognize the willingness on the part of the councillors and the city staff for recognizing this need. I have read tonight's community service staff report in response to April's meeting and the social planning policy from the region that is included. I am here tonight to ask, what does any of it mean in terms of actual delivery of services to the homeless population? Tonight, it seems our city is going to echo what was said in April 14th meeting, that this issue falls under the regional jurisdiction. The regional housing initiatives are definitely encouraging, and the work being done to transition families and individuals from shelter to housing is a positive step forward. I am here today to point out to you, our city councillors, that there is another demographic that is not being observed. The gap from street to shelter is a complicated one. And in order for it not to fall through the cracks, a plan has to be created, not just addressed. Last Wednesday, the region addressed the issue in council, stating they feel confident, flexible and expandable shelters are capable of handling the guests that will no longer be served. Actually, in the update attached to this report, the region states, the lack of out-of-the-cold shelter opportunity on certain nights may have the positive effect that more people may be encouraged to go to hostels, where trained professional staff may provide the appropriate support required. I have interviewed many people who use out-of-the-cold program, and it is apparent that the formal shelters may not be the answer for some of these individuals. In fact, my research suggests that up to 81% of these individuals will remain without shelter rather than walk up to that door. These are unique individuals with their own reason for not being comfortable accessing formal shelter at this time in their lives. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a peer. I understand where they're coming from. Demographics have changed considerably since I was without a roof over my head. And yes, the system should be changing along with it. But this sudden, abrupt change will put lives in danger. That frightens me. And I ask everyone in this room who cares and is as scared as I am to please stand up. Out of the Cold performed a service to the city's homeless population for 15 years without costing the taxpayers a cent. In the wake of these changes, I ask that you recognize that something must be done to fill the gap in the region's mandate. I ask you to consider possible incentives for landlords who may be able to provide suitable alternative sites.
You have 30 seconds to wrap up.
An investment in city-owned properties that you found 4 to maybe only have 4 of the 6 requirements, and implement. And most of all important, forward, we need more effective avenue of communication so the public can be informed of what progress. By making this commitment, you will be fulfilling the needs of the city's strategic plans that you have here. Quality of life, a voice that matters, nurturing pride in our community, a dynamic downtown where all residents diverse, and the final strategy, perception and reality. Well, to me and many others, that includes a city council who cares about all of their citizens. Thank you very much for this time and for me to share these concerns that are echoed widely throughout our community.
Thank you very much, Sharon. There may be a couple of questions for you as well. Councillor Urbanovich. Thanks,
Sharon, for coming in this evening and for sharing your comments with us about an issue I agree is of significant concern. It was bad enough when we lost one of the sites in our community, but to now know that we've lost 3 of them is a real, actually 4 sites, 3 nights, is a real concern. You know, I see there's a large group of people here, and you obviously got the word out to attend this evening. I'm wondering, did the group also attend at the region last Wednesday in terms of when they were dealing with the issue?
No, truthfully, I just got involved shortly before the region meeting, and since then I have been out on the streets doing interviews. I've interviewed 36 people that use Out of the Cold, and I guess moving forward. And I have been reading a lot about the region's mandate, and I just find a gap there that I'm hoping the city is going to be able to fill for us.
No, and I hear what you're saying. Has there been, between yourself and the group, any discussion with regional staff at all in terms of the issue and how we can collectively tackle it?
Well, I'm sure there's ongoing discussions with the region, but as you're aware, the region's mandate is more focused in housing, which is a wonderful cause and a wonderful mandate. But I'm just trying to point out to our city council that there is a gap. There's a gap. There's people, for whatever reasons they have, will not use formal shelters.
Right. No, I appreciate that, and I think that is a piece that we need to look at. Well, thank you for answering those questions, Mr. Mayor. I have some questions of yourself later after the delegations, and possibly make a motion as well.
Okay. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the last point that you brought up with response, as well as what you brought up in your presentation. Because you've done the interviews with people, and you're saying 36 people, can you help us appreciate maybe what some of their hesitation is to going to the hostel shelters?
I certainly can. I have, because of the time, the time that I gave myself, I do have a report here. It's a condensed report. It doesn't include, it includes the statistics, but it does not include a lot of the comments. And I have an extended version of that report, which I couldn't have ready for tonight. And it's available to, and I actually have 10 copies of this condensed report tonight for each and every one of you.
Would you be able to give us 1 or 2 examples of, obviously not identifying anybody, but why someone wouldn't want to go to a hostel service?
Yeah, there's different reasons and different at this venture, at this journey that some of these people are taking. There's different reasons. There's registration, eligibility reason, lack of trust, mental health addictions, and I have my associate that is going to follow me, and I think he's going to paint a pretty good picture of an example or 2 of some of the reasons why people might not take advantage of the formal shelters.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you, Sharon. Thanks for coming in, and you did very well. I know you were a bit nervous, but you did a wonderful job of presenting your case.
Thank you.
Similar to, and I haven't had a chance to read your report, and thanks for doing that. That takes a lot of your time as well, so you're very passionate about this issue. Is there, you said there were gaps. Is there something that you see that we could do to fill that gap? I mean, the Out of the Cold program filled the gap for a number of years, but when it's a volunteer-based organization, it's very difficult to keep that momentum going.
Right. And like I said, the demographics have changed considerably. I work Out of the Cold as a volunteer, so I realize the demographics have changed, and I am not in disagreement that the system has to change along with it. It's just this abrupt change is going to put people in danger. One of the asks that I kind of had to slip by because of the time, I like maybe an implementation of a task force to assist with outreach and to work with the region, who have already said that they would increase within current budgets. Anyway, perhaps utilizing some of the Out of Cold volunteers, because these volunteers have a keen understanding for and a relationship with some of these people that is superior to anything that they can get at the formal shelters at this time in their journey, right? So maybe just something city-based to look after that demographic that's going to fall through the cracks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You've given some concrete suggestions, and I'll be interested to look through this, what you've written up. Thanks so much for coming in and bringing it to our attention.
Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for your caring and organizing this tonight. In terms of the changing demographics, can you talk, do you mean the ages of people or their needs? What are you driving at there?
Well, I think it's noted in a lot of the literature, some of the reasons why the churches are backing out. Basically, there's the drug use, the increased drug use. That's an issue. At one point, when you were on the street, there was a connection, whether you used drugs or whether you didn't use drugs or whether you drank. And there's been lately a disconnect between the two demographics, and that can be very difficult. It's something that does not constitute pulling the wool out from underneath the system that works. It's something that constitutes finding solutions, moving forward to improve the system that already works for most, and making it work for all.
My last question really is about asking people what they want, what is helpful to them.
Right.
So thank you for asking a little bit about that with the 36 people. Obviously, you're a trusted person with the number that you spoke to. Do you think that part of the task force would be asking more people what they want?
Definitely. And I did ask in my interviews if these individuals would be willing to be put on a register, even if it's anonymous. And at any given night, if Peter Pan is not signed up at one of the formal shelters, if unfortunately that ends up happening, then at least the task force can work jointly with maybe the police force or the region's whatever outreach program, but at least we can be out there making sure that everybody is accounted for on the cold nights of the winter. Ultimately, I would hope that's not going to happen, but if the task force could be implemented and the Out of the Cold evenings be filled, that task force would be able to grow the out of the cold system and start bringing some of these people, transitioning them from the streets into shelters.
That's a wonderful term, transition. So thanks to everyone that came in and your leadership on this. I think that's a task force is exactly where we should be going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Etherington. Just hang on a second. Okay.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Sharon. Sharon, do we have any indication that regional outreach workers will support, and do they at the moment work with out-of-the-cold clients?
Well, there has not been a lot of outreach. I believe there's one, I believe I have seen one organization send outreach into Out of the Cold, and I believe it was from, I'm sorry, I can't remember.
That's okay.
But no, there hasn't been enough outreach. And maybe that's an error in the system that we didn't find the change, or find a solution to the change as it was happening, right? So it's just something that I'm really hoping we can do moving forward with our councillors' help.
Yeah, me too. Do we have any indication that regional outreach workers will help the homeless people who refuse now to go to emergency shelter?
The region has stipulated that they will look into increasing their outreach to the evenings. I can't quote them, but basically within their existing funds. So, like, I don't want to disrespect their mandate, but they really their mandate seems to be conducive of everybody's going to want to move into a home. Everybody's going to want to jump on the housing bandwagon, which is an amazing bandwagon, right? But there's a misconception, and it's not going to happen. So
There's also the huge misconception that some hardcore homeless people will choose to go to beds at emergency shelters, and that's what worries me, because I know from past experience that they will not. So,
sorry, what did you mean by emergency shelters? Like the out of the cold or the formal shelters?
the established Mary's Place, House of Friendship, those
Correct.
shelters.
Yeah. The vast majority of them say they will not.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Councillor Yunetsky.
Yeah, thank you. Just following up on a similar question, why don't they want to go to those shelters? I'm just trying to understand that they're provided.
Let's give you an example. There's mental health issues. Just think that I know one gentleman that goes to the churches, and it's open. It's a big room. You go into the shelters, it's loud, it's small rooms his mental health issue isn't allowing him to feel comfortable entering that environment.
Well, would that same type of condition pertain out of the cold in those shelters as well? Wouldn't it be?
It's a hall like this.
Yeah, I understand.
Where there's open, I don't know if I suffer from anxiety and depression, and there was times in my life that I couldn't be in a room that was like 10 by 10. It shut me in, and it gave me anxiety. That's just one example. Another example is some people may hear stories about these shelters and take it as truth, and we have to educate them, and that's what I meant about the task force to transition people into the shelters. There's addiction issues where people have been kicked out of shelters and cannot return for 3 months. There's even the registration and the eligibility. Like some of them just can't go through that process at this time in their journey.
Okay, appreciate that. I know you said you were involved with the region. You just started with them, and because they were involved, what you mentioned is GAP. Have you also approached the city of Waterloo or the city of Cambridge asking for assistance?
I haven't yet. Like I said, this is a new thing for me. I live in Kitchener. Most of the people who live homeless are under the Kitchener umbrella. Waterloo is not conducive to people who are having difficulty, you know, in some sense, with the exception of the amazing churches that reach out to help. So I haven't. It's not that I'm not going to. I'm moving forward. Just that my city is Kitchener, and I'd like to see my city and my city's councillors do something to step up for this demographic.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sharon.
Thank
Those are all the questions. Gary Howe.
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome, Gary.
Thank you. I'm the associate, apparently.
I had failed to say earlier on, you have 5 minutes for the presentation.
Understood.
And the bell actually indicates 1 minute left.
Okay. Oh, 1 minute. Okay, thank you. So I'm here today to present to you my thoughts on the great loss to the community regarding the Out of the Cold program and to emphasize the vital and continued need for it. As for the churches that have chosen to opt out, I can only humbly commend them for their efforts of service and salute them as unsung heroes of our community. Your extraordinary contributions will be greatly missed and long remembered. I understand the Out of the Cold program originated to provide a stopgap for capacity issues in the system, but more importantly is what this community effort has blossomed into. At the very least, the shelter of choice for the people, and there are reasons for that. You see, it's surprising how many of the people have been abused or neglected as children during their formative years when choice was not available to them. Today, they gravitate to Out of the Cold, where they don't feel threatened or misjudged, but instead safe and cared for. These are difficult attributes to gather statistics for. Not that long ago, I needed to attend Out of the Cold to help survive the harsh winter during a time of deep depression, alcoholism, and a crack cocaine addiction. I remember my reluctance and inhibition. I was prone to unrealistic terror and skepticism, fearful of hidden agendas, and would go to any length to protect what I thought was my freedom and sovereignty, even willing to sleep outdoors on the coldest of nights if need be. The lens through which I viewed the world was that depicted hostility, hopelessness, and harsh survival. I eventually was able to find solace in the warmth and care of the volunteers. It was important that they were volunteers. Their presence and efforts were ones of genuine valor. They valued me at a time when I was unable to value myself. This was my first breakthrough in recognizing and becoming receptive to the goodness being offered, and it started the slow process of mine being able to trust in others and have hope for myself. The journey of a new way of life was about to begin, unbeknownst to me. I understand the region has new resources to aid in this plight of the homeless. This is welcome news, but the ever-growing magnitude and complexity of this issue cannot be underestimated. Just last year, a 56-year-old man had to have both his legs amputated due to exposure to the cold. He was an alcoholic and therefore could not be fitted for prosthesis. He now permanently resides in a nursing home. The Out of the Cold program should not and cannot be replaced. It has managed to establish itself as the most valuable and utilized resources under the most adverse circumstances. It is time for all of us to start to offer help and begin to ask the question, what can we do to assist and support the good work for Out of the Cold? Whether in the form of financial aid through a discretionary fund, the providing of buildings, volunteer training, or critical outreach support and involvement. There is so much good foundation already in place that the region's new resources can be utilized to form a most viable partnership. All is most welcome and can only enhance the effectiveness of its life-saving mission. Community involvement is to be praised, encouraged, and cherished, not replaced. Our cities are known for innovation. Now is the time to innovate through partnerships between our people, our businesses, and our government-funded programs, and to build upon what was so selflessly built by our proud community. I hope the day will come when Out of the Cold can close its doors, The day comes when there is no one in need, a day when all are secure and warm and fed and looked after. That day has not yet come, but thankfully we have our volunteers, our out of the cold community. We need them, and may God bless them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Thank you.
One question, Councillor Fernandez.
Actually, I don't have a question. I just want to commend you on your courage for coming forward. I think it's a hard journey you've been on, and it's clear that you're on a new journey. And thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you. But you know, I don't really feel like I should be commended, because it was the people that helped me along, and I happened to be at some point beaten up enough to be receptive, and it was their love that inspired me to kind of take a look at life in a different light, and that started it. So I commend them.
Thank you very much. Councillor Etherington.
Gary, just one question, similar to what I asked Sharon, but from where you sit, do you think there will be a majority of homeless people who will choose not to go to established shelters and hostels?
I believe so. I mean, I can't give you numbers, but it seems there's a mistrust of authority, of government programs, for one. I think that most important is the volunteers establish relationships with these people, and therefore, through time, a rapport, and it's a loving relationship, and they know it's without agenda or without, a 9-to-5, commitment to fill. They're there for the one reason, and to be helpful, and that seems to create a trust factor, and that's why they keep coming back. There's a lot of fear of authority. I mean, you look at, I saw a guy the other day on a cot near Speaker's Corners, and somewhere he got a cot. Anyway, the police is writing him a ticket before he even woke up. This is the kind of thing where, and I'm not saying the police was in the wrong he's just doing his job, but this is the kind of thing that basically turns people off from going to the shelters, or to be told what they have to do and to jump through hoops. To me, it's a gentle process, and I think that it takes time, because these people are so aloof. Like, I was very aloof and skeptical and everything, as I mentioned. So building that rapport, and this is why I think a good utilizing resources of outreach workers. They seem to have, like Sharon's an outreach worker. There seems to be a good chance that things can get done through them. They're frontline people, but that's where it seems to be happening.
At the established shelters, do they have rules do they bar certain people for behavioral and addiction problems?
I believe so, yes. From what I've seen, there are people that aren't allowed back in there for a certain amount of time. And bad behaviors are basically not tolerated, and that's understandable, but at the same time, they have to go somewhere.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Gary.
Pardon?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we have 4 persons who have registered this evening. First one is Charles Nichols. Is Charles Nichols here? You just stepped out? Okay, we'll come back. Birgit Lindenberg. Is Birgit Lindenberg? Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't see you coming forward. Okay.
Hi, I'm just putting Lucky up here.
All right.
We don't want her barking. Good evening. My name is Birgit Lingenberg, and I know several of you to see you, and several of you I've spoken with you about poverty. So out of the cold, yes, I'm very, very sad that what is happening is happening. However, there is the other side of it. Maybe God and maybe every human in this room, no matter how poor we are or what our troubles are, maybe everybody in the world who's possible to think can think about one kind thing we can do for a homeless person. It doesn't only mean finding them a place to sleep. It means being helpful and being friendly, helping them access any needs they have, be them medical or food-wise, or even to get ID replaced. Another thing I'd like to let you know about is that I don't really want to say it, but I'm going to have to. There are very few homeless people here tonight. As I walked up here from the free barbecue near Mary's place at the church there, I talked to about 4 of them, and 2 of them told me, I'm sorry I can't come. I have to find a safe place to sleep tonight. The other thing, I talked to about 70, 75 people over the last 2 weeks because I am distraught. My daughter is disabled. She will die with her disease. Today she got more bad news. Anyway, people who are now poor, and anybody in this world can become poor at any time, believe me. Anyone can become poor. Anyone can become homeless. Anybody who is poor or rich or homeless has one thing on their mind. Let's get through life. Let's have a good day. Let's have a happy day. But if they continue to let homeless people just be on the streets, I'm afraid I'm going to see at least 5, maybe 10 people that I know. They're not my best friends, but I know them by first name at least. They're going to die this winter. Some people, as has been said, have mental health issues and or addiction issues. And believe me, some of them are so afraid that no matter how I beg and plead and come on, I'll hold your hand, they're afraid to come here. They said to me, Birgit, would you speak up for us? I said, I definitely will. I've heard stories from prostitutes, from drug dealers, from drug users, from mental health problems. I myself have Asperger's. But you know what? We're all human. I'm begging you with my heart. Just think real hard. How would it feel to sleep under the bridge and freeze to death in the cold of the winter? Because it's going to happen and I don't want to see it, but I know it will. So please help find a solution, any decent solution. And yes, some people are afraid to go to shelters, and I know people like that. And I've begged them, I said, get 3 or 4 that you're doing the same thing, you have the same hobbies, get together, rent a 2-bedroom. Guess what? They need a guarantor. Well, who's going to be their guarantor? I can't. I filed for bankruptcy in 2009 after I lost a $20 an hour job. Since then, my daughter and I have used many out of the cold meals. Thank God we still have a roof over our head. But really, for how long? Can our government, not only regional, not only provincial, but everybody in the world, every government, can they just do something to help get people along? I know the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, but I'm begging you again, because honest to God, I don't want to be homeless. I was once in '83 when I was married, long before my daughter was born. But please think of it. If I ever saw you people homeless or any of your family, I promise you I would beg for that too, because that's why I'm here. It's not about my daughter and me. It's about everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Birgit. Your daughter was also listed as wanting to speak. Is she here?
Yes, she is. She's right here.
Okay. She could come up at this time as well.
Okay.
Christiane, is it?
Christian. You know, we just stand. Okay, we'll just stand here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christian Lingenberg, and I have neurofibromatosis NF1. It causes tumors to grow everywhere on my nerves. I lived in Kitchener since I was born, and I have eaten many meals at several of the out-of-the-cold meals and at many sites. Because my mother and I are disabled and need to have some free meals regularly to be able to pay our rent. Please help all people who are homeless and or poor. Anyone can become homeless at any time. Please, I will be disabled until the day I go to heaven. I do not want to experience homelessness in my life. Perhaps people could find it in their hearts to help provide more funding, to help and more subsidized housing so more people do not become homeless. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. And thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Robert Campbell. Welcome, Robert.
I'm going to apologize. I'm not that well organized for this. I found out on very short notice that it was on. I have worked with the poor, the homeless, and have been very close to getting there myself. If I hadn't a very good landlord, I probably would be on the street now. That the reason that we don't want to leave this to the region or the province or to the federal government, because the problems all originate from there originally, is that these are Kitchener residents. The vast majority of the homeless in this region, or certainly in the Kitchener-Waterloo area, are resident of Kitchener. City of Waterloo has made it very inhospitable for those people, and they congregate here. So they're your citizens. They're also the brothers, sisters, cousins, mothers, and fathers of many of your residents. If we don't replace this housing, if we don't find a solution to this, they will freeze to death this winter. We will have bodies, something we can be proud of as a city that we haven't had for a while. People don't freeze to death because there's no place to go. This winter they may. We have a problem that's developed, partially been sent, if my understanding is correctly, from Metro Social Services sending us their problem cases. Was this better in Kitchener? Here's a bus ticket. This is certainly borne out in the people that I've had have seen develop or giving problems at similar facilities in the region, as they have been in many cases out of the town, new people here. We can't do anything about that, but we can do something about making sure that the volunteers at these places, at these out of the cold, are trained and are supported. And if the region and the city as its representatives on the council, on region, but also from the city, can provide people to go into these shelters and work, not 9 to 5, but somebody to be there who's trained to deal with the extreme mental cases or the extreme hardcore drug users. Somebody who knows how to deal with them when they get violent the proper way. People that can talk them down, that have had the training, that are willing to work overnight. Having somebody show up for a few hours in the afternoon is not going to do anything. You know, they're 7 o'clock at night, they go, well, that's when most of these guys start to have problems. Or if they wake up with nightmares in the middle of the night, the volunteers are left to deal with that. Adding professionals to the volunteers to give them that extra support is something the council should be doing. Another thing that a misconception I see showing up here is the Mary's Place, the House of Friendship. There's a 1-week limit at present, I believe, in both those locations. So you get off the street for a week. You don't stay there for a length of time. There aren't enough beds to take all the people who are currently on the street right now, who go out of the cold, in those facilities. So they are not a solution to the problem. They're there, they help the people that are transitioning, that are capable of moving into regular housing and getting back on their feet. And I have worked with a number of them, including my sister. That's to expect the House of Friendship to pick it up at Mary's Place. It won't work. It also doesn't help couples who aren't married and have children because they have to separate. Out of the cold, we need it. Some of these people will not. They have mental problems, lifestyle life issues. They will not go. We will not ever be able to get them to go to an organized place, but we need to give them a place that they're safe, and we should be looking at a year-round solution because we throw them out in March as it is, hand them a sleeping bag, a tent, a backpack, and they're not allowed to camp anywhere. So the problem is not just out of the cold, but right now that's the one that people will die from.
Thank you very much, Robert. There may be a question. Yes, Councillor Vrbanovich.
Thanks, and thank you very much for coming in tonight. Robert, you talked about the potential of trying to get some staff to work with out-of-the-cold volunteers. Can you touch on right now, I presume you're an out-of-the-cold volunteer yourself?
Actually, no, I was volunteering through another program called Hot Dog House, which has essentially gone away.
Okay. But I'm just wondering if you can comment, if you're aware, you know, what supports exist in terms of outreach workers and so on that make themselves available in the evenings at the Out of the Cold programs, or is it all purely just the volunteers?
My understanding, it is almost all volunteers. There may be one drug program that has outreach people, but these people are normally employed for a 9 to 5 or daytime environment. Out of the Cold's an evening, overnight.
No, right, I appreciate that.
So to expect them to pick that up, there aren't that many outreach workers out there. The working center has some out through St. John's Kitchen, but again, their primary function is out of the kitchen and dealing with the facilities that they have.
Right.
Having people there that know how to take a violent person and either calm them down, or if they do get violent, how to take them down and handle them. You don't want a fist fight, but it's very hard to break that habit if you haven't been trained. You have to restrain, take them to the floor, or hold them, and calm them down, or deal with it, or bring the police in. But that's not something that the average person can do when some guy's 3 inches from your face and swings. It's hard to grapple. It's hard to take him down. It takes somebody with training. It takes somebody with know-how. It's really nice if it can be avoided, because I've seen some fantastic people being able to quiet them down, calm them down, get them under control.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the other people in the audience tonight invited me to attend one of the evenings, and I saw a situation develop, and I marveled at the way the volunteers handled it, quite frankly, and de-escalated the situation. When you talk about a longer-term solution for folks that, ideally we can transition everybody into permanent housing, but as you point out, folks that are dealing with various mental health issues and so on, trust is a factor, and other things are a factor.
There are 2 people that you see every day if you walk downtown here that will never go into transitional housing. They just mentally are incapable of it.
Right. So I guess, one of my questions is, from your perspective, what do you think the solution there is? I mean, is it an Out of the Cold program, or is there something else that we should be looking at?
We will need an Out of the Cold program, because there will always be new people. There will always be people with long-term problems. Hopefully we can get it down to 20 or 25 people at most, instead of the hundreds that we're dealing with now. Long-term, let's stop looking at giving them full-size apartments. Let's start looking at something that fits more of the needs for the segment of them. People are walking around with shopping carts, and that's all they have. What are they going to do with a full-size apartment? Give them something that gives them a cozy, with their own control, 12 by 12. That's for many of them, it's all they need, and getting that stability may lead them back to a life.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming in this evening.
Council, there are a couple of more questions, Robert. Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thanks,
Trying to
Robert.
run away here.
Thank you, Robert. Do you think that the staff have enough training with gentle, persuasive techniques, and also to be able to manage security issues, that if there were some problems, or do you think that they need to bring in people?
I think with the existing clientele they've been dealing with over the years, they have a pretty good handle on it. And I know how much of it's actual training and how much of it's just years of working. Many of the volunteers that are in these situations are people who've either been there, like Sharon, or people who have come in and they've got a feeling heart and they've done it. There aren't many people who go there that are professionals. They're housewives or retirees, or they're people who feel that now that they've gotten out, they have to give back. There's a respect that they get from these people, even though sometimes it doesn't seem there, because they're there for that reason. But having people that are, with the newer people that we're getting, an incident that I had was we found needles on the floor of the washroom. Unfortunately, it had just been after a gentleman had taken his 5-year-old down there. We were rather upset when we found the needles, confronted the people who put them there, who weren't local. They were new people that came in. This is one of my problems with Metro Social Services was, their comment was, don't you believe in safe injection sites? And I said, yes, but this is a food program, not a injection site. At which point, and I point out that even in a safe injection site, you don't leave your needles on the floor. At that point, he prepared to get violent. It was the other people in the room that made him think twice, because all the male men in the room stood up and let them know that it wasn't me that he was going to attack. It was, he sat down. As far as I know, the group of them has not been, I haven't seen them in the region since. But they are, I'm seeing kids that are coming in with the attitude, not the ones who have come up through and had some time. These are the people they need help dealing with. Some of these people simply need to fit in, need some help. Other people that just come in with a chip on their shoulder because they think they're entitled to it.
Robert, do you think we need to get back to 7 days for out of the cold again?
We do, definitely, and with overflow sites.
And then the last question is, do you agree with the concept of asking people what they need and want in the way of a task force that would look at this holistically?
Yes, I don't think that I think including them in the process, some of them are just simply not going to tell you what they want.
Right, but they might tell
But there are
like
some
Sharon,
that do, and they have been thinking about it.
Right, they might tell a trusted person like an outreach worker. I don't mean a government person, I just mean a trusted contact.
Some of them don't even want to say. As
Okay.
I said, so I've had some of these discussions with some of them, and nothing's going to happen. They've lost all faith in things working out for them.
Thanks very much for your help tonight and for what you're doing.
Something else I should have mentioned I did want to mention is the City of Kitchener could help by helping, pushing, getting funding, whatever, safe injection sites in the city. You know, drugs are a bad problem, but the problem is worse when we have needles all over the park, we have them left behind. These are other problems they create. The region can't, or the city can't fix the drug problem. The federal government has to be able to do that, but we have to deal with and protect our citizens at both levels.
Sorry, Robert, there still are some questions. I'll let you know when I run out of questions, okay? Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. Actually, my questions have been asked, so I just wanted to thank you as well. And I just wanted to let the mayor know that I have a motion that I'd like to bring forward when all of our delegates are done.
I think someone else had indicated, Councillor Vanovich said the first time round. So we'll see. I don't know what it's going to be. Councillor Etherington.
Robert, two quick questions. One is, I don't expect you or anyone in this room to understand the difference between this council and regional council and responsibilities of both. Are you going to take these people and this case to the region? Because I would really urge you to do that. Do you plan to do that?
I will work with them. Today was the day that I've actually realized there was something organized going on. I have talked with a number of people, including Dan. I realize that there's difference in responsibilities, but I also realize that the responsibilities in this tend to fall through the cracks.
Oh, I agree.
They are Kitchener citizens, and they will die. If they've 19 degrees below zero, you try sleeping in a snowbank.
No, I'm aware of that. And my second question, one glimmer of hope out of Kitchener, and it's a distance off as yet, but we're in the midst of taking part in what is called a hub program because of the problems of homelessness and in part the problem of people on the street, where you bring together a whole group of agencies. They work closely together, and I'm talking social service agencies, health agencies, housing agencies, cops, even politicians. They all work together, and they pick cases one at a time, concentrate on that case, and try to find some of the things you're talking about, even if it's just that small room that the person needs to get out of the cold. Do you think that would help?
Yes, because homelessness is not a class, a group. It's not one problem. It's everything from a family that has just simply had their resources run out, can't afford their rent, they can't get into community housing, they now have to find some place to live. To a single guy who's out, or a guy who's been thrown out by his wife. To people who have mental problems, people who can't hang onto a place because most of their money goes into their veins. That's a mental health issue that needs to be dealt with, but in the meantime, they're on the streets. To people who have alcoholism problems, and the same thing, they're drinking it. To people who just simply don't have the mental capacity. We closed up all our institutions and threw the people on the street and left the police to deal with them. We didn't help them.
No. Thank you.
Okay, Robert, that was the last question. Thank you. The last delegation is Charles Nichols. Welcome, Charles.
Thank you. People in the audience know that I've worn a lot of hats in this community over the years. Many of them dealing with poverty or homelessness. Tonight I'm here simply as a concerned citizen who knows what it's like to be homeless and to try and help those who are homeless. I'm winging it because I decided 10 minutes before this meeting started that I was going to talk. And I just spent 20 minutes with the sheikhs real bad as I tried to think through exactly how I was going to word this. And oddly enough, the sheikhs only stopped when a young lady walked up and said, "I need your help." I don't know what the path forward is. So I'm not going to tell you what I think, give you one. Like, I don't know the solution beyond saying we all need housing. I'm asking for a broad community-based discussion. And I mean very broad. Everything from councils and members of government at all levels, people in the official shelter system, members of the cold, and citizens at large, and especially those who are facing homelessness. And let's really discuss it, okay? It's through the discussion we'll find a solution, I'm sure. Without that discussion, then the answer is kind of being imposed. Really, we need to understand, have a common understanding of, how we got here, what is homelessness, what is Out of the Cold's place in the community. What is Out of the Cold? Is it one program? Is it 11 programs? Okay? We're only going to get further if we understand. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. You know why? People don't come in one size. Okay? Is there a typical mayor out there in Canada? Okay? I don't think so. Okay? There's not a typical outreach person. The young lady I was just supporting for the last couple of minutes said, "I want to talk, but I'm not on the list." I know it goes against your rules. I know it's not how you like to do things. May I yield what's left of my 5 minutes for the young lady to stand beside me and share what's on her heart. I do not know what she wants to say. I know that she is very emotional right now.
If she would like to come forward with you, yes, that is fine.
Come here. You can do this.
I'm Laura Hitchcock. I attended Out the Cold, and I don't think anyone will want to use Mary's place or that. I for sure will. I walked out there 3 times due to drug users. I've had my stuff stolen, ID and everything. I don't think it'll last. And with what I heard here, it won't last. I know all these people. I don't think it's right.
I honestly don't think so. I'm still struggling. I walked out of an agency for almost getting killed in my own bed. I'm struggling. I don't think it's right that 3 churches are shut down. Yes, people are aggressive. Yes, people have put volunteers in the hospital. People are thieves. But that doesn't make it right that people have to suffer that need the place. I for sure don't think it's right. And it hurts me hearing all of this. I don't think it's okay. I don't agree with it. Everyone should have a place, and I won't go to Mary's place. I'm too old for a roof. I won't go to anywhere, none of the shelters. One of the ladies that actually spoke first, that's here, actually did talk to me, and that's why I will not go. I know all the people that are homeless. Most of them will refuse. I will refuse. They want to live on the streets because they won't take the shelters. They're drug users, and they will continue being drug users. Most of them that I know don't want to better their lives. They'd rather stay in jail. I for sure don't want to go in a shelter, and none of them. I don't blame the ones that don't want to go there. So I'd rather the 3 days back that has been taken up. Otherwise, people will die. And I know certain individuals at their age. No. People are sleeping in banks because it's cold. People are sleeping anywhere right now when it's pouring rain. People are getting sick because of this weather. Not cool. Churches should be back the way it was. I don't agree with it. And if it doesn't change for the people that actually need this place, there will be fights. There will be threats. And people are aggressive. With one of my other friends just spoke. You don't want to get in the way of people being aggressive. You will end up in the hospital. Volunteers ended up in the hospital. I've asked certain volunteers when I was in out of the cold, why did you sign up for this? What, do you rather get hurt and put in the hospital? They're like, we signed up for it to help. No, you didn't. You didn't sign up just to get hurt. Volunteers have quit because they are done with the attitude. That's the only reason why. And there are reasons why they shut down. Property damage, drinking. Everyone that spoke for this is true. It's right. Everything they've said is right. I've lived it 6 months. I'm still living it until I find a decent place. I'm couch surfing to my friends' houses that actually have a place because I don't feel safe outside. I shouldn't feel I should feel safe. And with the news I got today, my dad died, and I don't even know him. I almost died at 16 months. Was abused when I was adopted. I almost got killed. I'm having death threats uttered to me. And now I'm daring them, bring it, you're full of words. I dare them because they know they're full of words and they won't do it. I'm not someone people want to mess with, but I'm not violent. I will just speak what's on my mind. Otherwise, the churches better be put back to the way it was.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I want to stress something. Finger pointing is of no help. And while it's worse than unhelpful, actually. But how we got here is not as important as where we go forward. We have 67 days by my count until the cold is scheduled to open. That's not very long. And this is one individual who found the courage to come up here, okay? There are dozens.
It is.
And dozens who I wish had the courage, I wish had the opportunity They are our brothers, they are our sisters, they are people. I don't care if they're using, if they're using drugs, they're using drugs. If they're an addict, they're an addict. They're a person first and foremost, and they have a right to safety, if nothing else.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you, for coming, and council will now discuss about it. You were the last delegations to speak on this matter. So thank you sincerely for both of you. Okay, back to Councillor Vrbanovich.
Mr. Mayor, and if I can ask the clerk to put this on the screen. I've tried to draft something up tonight as we were dealing with this, so I acknowledge right up front it may not be perfect, but I think what I'm trying to do is help ensure that we can we shrink it down a little more so I can see. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Really acknowledge two things that I think that need to happen at a municipal level, and obviously regional council, and you're our rep on regional council, has had the opportunity to deal with this and to be briefed on this, and we have the information in our report. But I think first and foremost it would be very helpful to have region attend our next community services committee or a strat session on the same day to deal with the issue of homelessness and the out of the cold situation, and do a presentation to us so that we're all fully aware of the situation. Secondly, I think what really this requires is a task force that's going to see some urgent action happening, in particular in relation to this winter. And so the second part of the recommendation, and we're getting into a difficult time period. I know the region's going into a lame duck period as an example. We're not. Obviously, councils are going to stop meeting throughout the fall, but that staff look at bringing a joint recommendation forward with the region by next committee for a task force that would involve social agencies, the government, private sector, and other community partners to bring recommendations forward for both short-term solutions, i.e. for this winter, by our November meeting, and longer-term solutions beyond that. I realize this is a difficult time, but I think it's really important that we deal with this. We deal with it urgently. We are dealing with real people here with real issues, but these are real lives. And it's a complex issue that's not going to get solved, quite frankly, around this horseshoe. But I think it's incumbent on us to show the leadership and bring the community together in order to try to tackle the short-term issue, and then on a more long-term basis, see how we can deal with it, so we can get it to the point that Robert talked about, that maybe we only end up with 20 or 30 people still on a regular basis, as opposed to the large numbers that are at out of the cold now. So that would be the motion I'd like to bring forward.
Okay, is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Etherington. So discussion on this motion, just looking at dates. Our next committee meeting is September the 8th, Monday, September the 8th, and the following day, September the 9th, is a committee day, including their community services, the region, on September the 9th. That's at the region. So just to have those dates in your mind as you are speaking. Yes?
Just to be clear, so what I'm looking for is the staff recommendation on the task force, who would be on it and so on, would come to our next committee meeting. That's the last committee meeting we have until November. And so they would bring any recommendations back to our November meeting then, from the task force.
Yes, which would be November the 10th.
Right.
Okay. But in terms of should this be approved, as the motion itself states, would be a coordinated effort between the region and the city.
Yeah, and I think the important point to remember here is the experts on dealing with this, we don't have that expertise in our, on our staff. We have a lot of people that are very caring, that are committed to community services, to social development, and we can certainly work in conjunction with the region on it. But the reality is that we need the region, who ultimately, has the expertise and the professionals on staff to deal with this, to be a key part of this. And that's where I think you can help us through your role at the region on that.
Well, I'm certainly prepared to discuss it with the region even prior to the new September the 9th meeting. There's no doubt about that. But before any formal action could be taken, that would be the earliest that it would happen. And some of the thought process getting to where we are today, of course, has been some of those issues. We dealt with some of those issues at the region, as the report states. And there was an update on that, I think, that I had forwarded to you, to all of council at the end of last week as well, Friday, I think it was. So we'll go over to the rest of the comments. Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe back in April, I moved the motion that resulted in this report tonight. While understanding that social services are a regional government issue, and I don't expect people to understand that, I'm disappointed in the report that is before us. In my opinion, it says and does little to improve the worsening situation of homelessness. And I thought it should have gone a great deal further than it did. But I'm going to support Councillor Urbanovich's motion, because I'm still hoping we can move further than, as a city, than we have up until this date. As I say, I'm not happy with the report, and I'm certainly not happy with regional responses, because from where I sit in a downtown ward, all we are saying is that in this document and in some recent publicity, and I'll quote this report because this is exactly what I've been hearing, the lack of out of the cold shelter opportunity on certain nights may have the positive effect that more people may be encouraged to go to the hostels. And quite frankly, that astounds me. Again, recognizing this is a regional issue, we all know that for a variety of reasons, addictions and related other issues, other behavioral issues, there are those sometimes who are banned from emergency shelters, and we cannot assume that this winter all people living on the street will accept beds at those shelters. That's hard to understand, but that's a fact. There are others who greatly prefer the friendlier reception they get out of the cold, and that's not meant as a criticism of the overworked shelters. Because these facts are not likely to change, and because I think it's completely unrealistic to believe that uncaring higher levels of government will finance supportive housing for hardcore homeless people, I'm concerned, like the speakers tonight, that without out of the cold, we'll have people ending up sleeping out this winter. And in downtown Kitchener, we'll suffer the consequences of that, of those out of the cold closures. At best, we'll see more people sleeping outside and surviving, and at worst, as these people have said, you'll have people at risk of freezing, sometimes freezing to death on the streets. It has happened. And we have to do something to address such a tragic issue, one that I believe should be an absolute shame for higher levels of government.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Yes, through you, Mayor Zaire. I can support the recommendation brought forward by Councillor Urbanowicz. I'm really hoping, though, that this task force, and for the short-term and the long-term goals, because what I've heard tonight was mistrust of government, fear of authority, volunteers being threatened, and we're the folks that are being asked to help. We're the government. So I don't want to begin to understand that, because I don't think I can understand that, but I hope that the task force that will be set up can get a better understanding and figure out why that's the case, because I think we will have getting difficulty finding volunteers and setting up volunteer organizations if volunteers don't want to do it. So, and if it's not without government help. So I'm probably not sounding like I'm making sense here, but I just want to make sure that task force can somehow calculate that and bring those issues forward and find out what can be done to ensure that organizations that are getting the funding, such as the hostels and all that, can be more attractive, or finding what's the real cost.
Thank you, Councillor Glenn Graham.
Thanks very much. And once again, just like the community flag issue, our community is ahead of us on this issue. And I'd particularly like to thank Sharon for her leadership on this, because it's absolutely a brilliant idea you've had, and it's where I was going with this. That's why I asked those questions, because I think we need to hear from the people that are directly affected, your voices in your safe environments, wherever that is, and led by you, not led by us. So I think that you folks should choose the when and the where and how this is looking, small groups or whatever it looks like, that we do look at issues like the safety and security of the shelters, because certainly we've heard about that being a real issue, the issue of food. And it's not just about shelter, but where do you get food during the week? The fact that there's the need for training, and how do we supply that? And so there's so many elements to this kind of role, but it's the critical element is not talking about you, but talking with you. And I think that that's the key element to this whole task force, that the leadership should be certainly have at the helm people from this community who know what they're talking about, especially trusted outreach workers. I think that's absolutely critical. So Sharon, thank you for your role tonight, and I hope you continue to play a very important role in this. I think you've obviously got a lot of respect, and you've done the work and you've lived the experience. So I'm looking forward to seeing the outcome of this. I think it's a good role that the City of Kitchener can play as a facilitator at the very least, and listen and try and take this seriously, whatever the outcome. Thank you.
Okay, before I go to the next three speakers, Mr. May would like to put some information in here, I think.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's just a small point, but one I want to make sure Council turns its mind to. To bring a report back by September 5th would basically mean the procedural bylaw would have staff completing and submitting that report by this Thursday. I certainly don't think we could do this issue justice in that time, and so what I'd suggest is that we would endeavor to have the report completed and posted online by September 5th, which I believe is the Friday before committee. And I think that's an appropriate amount of time for staff to complete the report.
Under the circumstances and timing, I believe that is what we'd have to do, yes. So we'll take that into consideration within the recommendation. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I apologize, but I would like Councillor Urbanovic to read his motion, because I can't make it out. And then I will have a comment, okay?
Okay.
But
so the first part of the... sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first part of the motion invites that regional staff be invited to attend our next Community Services Committee or a strategic session on the homelessness out of the cold issue. So in other words, that would have to happen before our community services meeting that day. So we can have a broad conversation on this issue, and the local councillors can be brought up to speed in the same level as the regional councillors are. And the second part of the motion is that staff bring a joint recommendation forward with the region by next committee, so the September date, for a task force that would involve social agencies, government, private sector, and other community partners to bring recommendations forward for short-term solutions by our November meeting and longer-term solutions beyond that.
Let's put specific dates on those so there's no ambiguity. The November date would be November the 10th, and the next committee meeting in the second paragraph would be September the 8th.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Back to you, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, thank you. I must admit that I've really been fortunate to have lived a sheltered life.
Can you move your microphone over, please?
And I'm not very familiar. I've learned a great deal over the weekend reading this report. I've learned a great deal tonight. I couldn't understand why people would not, if they didn't have the premises, that they would go to hostels and things like that. And I think I can better appreciate, after listening to all of the delegates tonight, I applaud them for coming out and to tell their stories. I think it's a hard thing to do, but and in saying this, I fully realize this is a regional problem, a regional issue, and not it's a problem that we all have, but it's a regional issue. But as a local councillor, I would be pleased to support anything that we can do here at the local level. It's really alarming to see what is happening with people that have run into bad luck in life and things that we need to all put our hand out. And I know that it's not something we can deal with directly, but I think it is something that we can help out with. And I'm prepared to follow up with this and whatever we can do. And I guess these are the first steps. And winter approaches pretty fast in the next few weeks ahead. So it is something that we have to move on. Thank you.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for their presentations and everyone for coming out tonight. You really are making a difference by being here. Having said that, I'd like to add something to the recommendation if possible, or an amendment, however you want to approach that. But it's just information from staff to bring back at the September 8th meeting with regards to the costs that it would be to assist the Out of the Cold program financially. I think it's important to have that information so that we can have that discussion. I'm not suggesting that at the end of the day the city take on the full responsibility or any of the responsibilities, but so that at least moving forward we have an understanding of what those costs are, and if we choose as a council to help in that, we can do that with the knowledge. I don't want to see a report come back on September 8th and not have that information, and then need that information and us not have the opportunity to do something in a timely manner before we come to the winter months. So I would like that either, I don't know if Councillor Verbenovich would add that to the recommendation or if I add that separately. I just think it's important for the overall context of us being able to move forward as a council to have that information in front of us.
Perhaps you, in the next few minutes, and Councillor Verbenovich could get that sheet back and add something to it. So that we know exactly what is being referred to.
Sure, thanks.
Mr. Wilmer.
I think it goes without saying that each one of our staff reports does include financial implications, so if we're reporting back, we will build that in. We don't need a special recommendation from council on that.
That's up to you. You decide. We're going to I'm going to go to the speakers lists. Councillor Davey.
Pardon me. Cross communication here. So very briefly, I just wanted to say that I saw a lot of courage in the delegations this evening, and I appreciate that. I do wish that all of Regional Council bore witness to it as well, because as has been said many times, this is certainly an issue that's under their jurisdiction. So at the end of the day, they'll have to be on board with whatever comes out of it. I don't want to formalize it. I think the motion as it is has plenty of content already, but I would add informally to staff. I know there's tight timelines, but there is a Safe and Healthy Communities meeting, or one of the city's committees, on September 4th. So should the report be ready in time, and I do see there are a couple of members from Safe and Healthy in the audience as well. Should the report be ready in time, I think that it might be a good idea to have that committee provide comment and potential endorsement before it comes to committee of Kitchener. Thank you.
On the point of regional councillors becoming aware, they are aware of the issue very much, obviously. But they have not had a presentation as we have had from delegations as we have had tonight. I did send a note to the chair of the region during the meeting to click into the online, the streaming earlier on, but notwithstanding that, tomorrow or later tonight, I'll even send a note to all of Regional Council to go back onto our online version of tonight and ask them to take a look at this and take the few minutes or the hour or whatever it takes to also listen to it. So we'll go on with the speakers list. Councillor Branch, I'm going to leave you to the end. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you. I too am prepared to support the recommendation that's before us. I want to thank the various speakers who came mostly unprepared and with our last-minute preparations and did very excellent presentations. I was quite impressed, and it was also a good learning experience as to how some of these things fall through the cracks between the regional government and other agencies as well. However, I just want to comment and indicate that I think at the regional perspective, because they are basically a social agency, and one of the delegations pointed out that basically they don't have anybody, or maybe one person that works in the evenings, which is one of the time that you need the support and guidance through the social workers, that they should step up to the plate and do something. And as per example, we have bylaw enforcement to enforce regulations in our municipalities and parks and wherever, and they work in the evenings during the week. They work on weekends as well. And I can't see why the regional cannot provide some social services and some staff to support and work with these people in the evenings and on the weekends when they most need it, not 9 to 5 in their own offices. So.
Councillor Fernandez, just hang on a second to find my cursor. Okay, there you go.
Thank you to everybody who came in this evening. You've made a very strong statement, and you've told some very interesting and very heart-wrenching stories. I'm glad to see that where my motion was going to go, it was very, very much similar to what Councillor Urbanovich has put forward. So I think it will be very simple. You will see some strong support from this council to move forward and find some solutions.
Councillor Urbanovich, final speaker.
Well, I'm just maybe going to let Councillor Galloway give you the final wording on that financial. Galloway Seelock, sorry.
We learn, but sometimes it's we fall into
in the heat of the moment. We get back to old habits.
Yes, we're referring to Councillor Galloway Seelock's double-barreled name.
Okay, so for the first paragraph, the wording would now be that regional staff be invited to attend our next Community Services Committee or a STRAT session to present on the homelessness out of the cold issue, including what it would cost to assist the out of the cold program financially, and then the rest remains the same.
Okay.
And just in terms of, I too want to thank everybody who came forward this evening, Ms. Feeney, for organizing everybody, taking the time to talk about it with people who actually are users of the Out of the Cold program, and for everyone else for sharing their very personal stories. I see a number of familiar faces in the crowd, and a number of people, including the Lindenbergs, who I've spoke to on a number of occasions. And it takes a lot of courage to come in and share your personal stories, but they make it very real for all of us. And really want to thank you all immensely for doing that. I'm hopeful, Mr. Mayor, that between ourselves and the region and getting everyone else together, we can tackle these issues. We have a history in this region of being innovative, of being creative, of being barn builders. And while we often talk about barn building in terms of dealing with some of the other things that we do in the community, like economic development and so on, I think we can also look at it in the context of social building and building our human assets as well. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I would ask that we have a recorded vote on this issue.
Councillor Singh, a brief comment?
Yes, I'll be very brief. Sorry, I had queued in before, but I had to step out. My apologies. I just wanted to thank everyone that came before Council to share a very private, a very difficult topic in their lives, and something that's affected them, at the same time something that affects society that needs to be spoken of. And it took considerable courage, the fact that you were able to do it in a public forum. And absolutely would be supportive of the motion. And I think with the resources with the City of Kitchener and of course the region, I'm confident that some solution can be found if you come together. And there's signs of prosperity throughout the city, but it's more important to really reflect and focus on those that need the most help as well in when we prioritize our aspects. So very supportive of the motion, and hopefully something positive will come out of this.
Okay, recorded vote has been called for. You can now vote. That's carried unanimously. Thank you all for coming. We will, the story will continue. Okay, we'll now proceed with the rest of the agenda. We're moving to item C, 6C, and this relates to natural gas rates, which is clause 5 on the Finance and Corporate Services Committee report. We have two delegations. First one is Harold Druitz. And there was an additional report from Mr. Malcolm on this that was included in our weekend package. It's dated August the 20th. Mr. Druitz. Time is starting.
Mr. Mayor and City Councillors, I have read both the July 31st and August 20th, 2014 reports. I suggest there is no need to hit KU customers with a 4.7% increase. When I look at the December 31st, 2013 Kitchener Financial Report, the 2014 Gasworks budget and actual statement of revenue and expenses and stabilization reserve fund reports for the 3 months ending March 31st, 2014, I didn't dare ask for the June 30th info. I see very little depletion of the reserves. There is approximately $9 million in reserves at the end of 12/31/13. I don't see any indication that these reserves are being majorly depleted during 2014 and, for the most part, into the next 10 years. On the August 20th report, under the heading Impact of 1, 2, 3 cent reduction in the fixed daily charge in the stabilization balances, the Reserve Fund Policy Staff Report FSC 12-102 is stated. It's an excellent policy. However, these gas reserves should not be used to provide a dividend to the city's operational budgets, nor should these reserves be used to be transferred to other types of reserves. Example, gas reserve funds to Gulf Enterprise, which was done in 2012. KU customers should not be subsidizing an additional one-third of City of Kitchener taxpayers or any other operational expenses. Council should keep the funds in the proper buckets. For the last 1.25 years, administration has mostly referred to the gas supply cost being a commodity flow-through cost. Finally, we are given a partial breakdown of the gas supply program costs. I suggest there is room for some cost decreases, again, in order that the KU customers can benefit from, namely, a decrease in the rate. As a Kitchener Tax Watch Group, we really take exception to the following statement on the July 31st, 2014 INS 14-015 report. The last statement before the alignment of the city with Kitchener's strategic plan. Kitchener Utilities' active management of its system portfolio mitigated the impact of higher market prices on the supply costs due to the harsh winter. This is a very one-sided, unbalanced statement with no reference to the bigger picture that KU customers were subject to for the last few years. At least paid $1,150 higher per the Waterloo Regional record at approximately 66,000 customers for at least a total of $76 million. On the plus side, it is good to see under conclusion of the above-mentioned report, an alert will be printed on the envelope regarding rate changes. I will be glad to answer any questions.
Councillor Gazzola.
I only really have one question for the delegate. I do have questions to staff, and at the appropriate time, I'd like to remove my original recommendation.
But we'll come back
When I say remove, I mean to move it again, not take it off.
We'll, first of all, let's just deal with the question to the delegation. We'll come back to you for the questions of staff.
Yeah, I just, I wanted to bring forward a question that you had asked me, just that I think it's, and you had asked about the surplus in our gas works, and you had referred, you were doing your homework, and you referred to our audited financial statements. And what was that figure that you were asking about? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I thought between the two of us, we said that was $7 million, and then it's another $1 million in. I have the financial statement here.
It's on page 98.
Page 98, right?
Yeah, that's the figure you were asking.
So the delivery operations, the reserve was $7 million. The supply operations, the reserve is 1.6, and the transportation operations, the reserve is $1 million. So I was kind when I said 9.
I was actually referring to the accumulated surplus figure. What is the accumulated surplus figure? Page
the $108 million.
Yes, that's what I wanted. I thought you would like to refer to that.
Oh. Well, yeah, to me that the accumulated surplus leaves a bit to be desired when it comes to accounting rules, I think. The surplus that's in there is all the assets of the gas company, and you know, I mean, it should be stated as a proper assets and not just lumped into accumulated surplus delivery. I'm surprised that this is allowed.
Okay. One other question, Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be very brief. Mr. Drury, just help me understand this a little bit, because I agreed with your earlier points when you've appeared before Council in recommending that we move to a more market-based model rather than the stability model that we've had for a number of years prior. But the other aspect of moving closer to a market reflecting rate setting is that there's more ups and downs, so more spikes in the rates. So a lot of times the reserves act as a bit of a buffer and helping to ease the rate increases to our ratepayers. So just trying to understand your new argument here now saying we shouldn't rely too heavily on our reserves either. Just if I want to give you an opportunity to kind of answer that.
What was your last statement?
Just if you can take an opportunity to reply on the necessity of reserves to safeguard or to soften the sudden increases in gas rates now that we're moving more closer to a more market reflecting model.
Well, there is necessity for reserves, but I don't think the reserves need to be where they are. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you that I know where the reserve should be, but I do see the bigger economic picture. And, CPI is going down. Today, the Federal Reserve, that's U.S., is looking to increase rates. The Governor of the Bank of Canada is not looking at that at all, which means that the economy is soft. And even people, including the consultant that was here, when was it, the end of June? He said the chances of the price being, for the most part, slightly below $5 is there for the next 15 years or so.
I just wanted to reconfirm that you agreed and you understood the necessity of the reserves, and you're right. I think the discussion needs to be had as to where that right model is in setting, where the reserves do need to sit. So, and that's part of the discussion that we'll have to have. So, thank you.
Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Druids. When you looked at the stabilization reserve levels in the report, were you surprised to see them at $5.7 million for the 73-cent proposal?
Yeah, I did look at that. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time to look at the detail, but there seems to be a disconnect between what was in the budget and what was in the statement dated December 31st, 2013, because I thought that they would have been. I thought the numbers would have been the same, and they're not.
You're familiar with our budget, then? I mean, you've been here before us a number of times.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the pages.
Okay, so in our Gasworks utility delivery,
Yes.
Are you aware that the minimum benchmark reserve is $4 million?
Yes.
Okay, that's why I asked you if you were surprised that it was higher.
And the thing that I don't understand, and again, I didn't have time to talk to the CFO on this. When you look at the comparative 3-month statement, March 31st, 2013, under the Stabilization Reserve Fund, accounting shows the transfer to the reserve of $3.3 million, but it doesn't show the net revenue expense. And says year-end only. Well, gee whiz, I mean, it's in the budget. All you got to do is take 25% of it. I don't know why that isn't done.
Okay, thank you.
It's misleading, my opinion.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I noticed I wasn't thanked, Mr. Mayor.
Pardon?
I noticed I wasn't thanked for coming forward.
Oh, my goodness. Harold.
Hey.
Thank you for being here, Harold.
What is fair is fair.
Tricia Wharton, next delegation. Thanks for being here, Tricia.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that up front. Hopefully it'll remain the same when we're finished, but we'll go from there. Mr. Mayor and the City Councillors, as you know, I've been here before on this issue, and I just wanted to have a follow-up since we're finding the final aspects of this. And I just wanted to comment that due to the previous gas purchase policy in place, Kitchener utility customers have paid a huge premium compared to Union Gas, which you're aware of over $1,150 over the past 5 years, or $230 a year on average, each with 66,000 customers paying $76 million overall, as per information in the Kitchener-Waterloo record. There is a concern there about the reference that the Union Gas will pay $200 higher and Enbridge $400 higher in costs this year. Due to the unusual and extremely cold past winter compared to the proposed $40 increase we're seeing for the KU customers is incomplete in its conclusion, that is leading to a long-term negative inference on Union Gas Enbridge rates for what is basically going to be a short-term rate cycle. So this is something that's a short-term issue. It's not expected to be a long-term proposal. There also seems to be a contradictory discrepancy with the chart shown in Appendix A of the August 20th natural gas rate follow-up, showing that there's only really a $10 to $20 rate differential. So I'm not sure how that plays out against the $200 to $400 costs. If you compare that with the Appendix A, it did seem to be a difference from the first report in July to the second report in August that made no sense. It also fails to recognize the net long-term overpayment by KU customers ranging from $790 to $990 net between KU customers and Union Gas and Enbridge. And once the short-term market anomaly has worked its way through the system, market pricing will return to normal levels for all suppliers. Kitchener customers have also contributed to the Gasworks reserve, resulting from assuming the risks of, quote, the impact of the natural gas price volatility that exists in the marketplace. This is per the comment from July 31st natural gas rates staff report by Wally Malcolm. This overcontribution needs to be addressed. In addition to the $9 million plus reserve, it is reasonable to project that the 4.7% increase has room to return some of the customers' money back to them from the Kitchener utilities. Adjusting the proposed daily fixed charge from 0.73 cents to a 1 cent reduction in the gas delivery rate, so bringing it down to 72, will generate an increase close to the rate inflation at 1.16%, which I know that kind of figuring has been discussed in Council many times as sort of a budgetary guideline. After the public outcry, however, about these overcharges, the gas purchase policy was recently changed to move the rates charge closer to the market rate while managing the natural gas price volatility. The natural gas market price for September 2014 has been set at $3.88, still below the last 6 weeks' figures at $4. And according to industry experts and economists, including Union Gas itself, natural gas pricing is expected to consistently remain under $5 till at least 2025 to 30, softening market volatility. CPI is also softened from the expected 2.4 to 2.1% in June, and this is expected this trend will continue. And in the larger picture of economic recovery, government revenues, housing markets, consumer interest rates are leading to a balanced federal government budget in the 2015-16 year with a forecasted surplus of $6.8 billion. And the government is presently presenting preparation for the next budget to mitigate the the overpayment by taxpayers, resulting in this surplus by providing tax credits and paying down the debt. Councillors can follow this direction on behalf of Kitchener utility customers as well. A major concern of my April 28th presentation I made to Council was that KU customers had not been provided with the relevant information to understand the premium charge in agreeing to maintain a stable versus variable rate plan, as noted in the marketing surveys and information pieces. Not being transparent and only providing high-level information has been noted, and actively choosing to limit the pertinent information, leaving KU customers and councillors in the dark, is a disservice to all involved. With the additional notes of the impact reduction, correlating services not being replaced, this serves as a reminder that the previous overpayments directed to our infrastructure planning are not easily replaced if the natural gas policy is not revised to keep up with current and future policy requirements in infrastructure planning. This also means making adjustments to policy, not just for natural gas, but it also requires details in order to prevent costly situations from recurring again to Kitchener residents on other issues. Also, the notification of the rate change alert on envelopes is a step in the right direction to keep residents actively informed on changes affecting their household. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Right on time. Questions? Yes, Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you one question. Staff came out with a recommendation with different rates, and last Monday or 2 weeks ago, I made a recommendation of instead of going to the fixed daily delivery charge of 73 cents, I suggested an increase from 69 to 70 cents. I'd like your comments on that.
Well, I think there certainly seems to be room to work with some adjustments. As I stated, the Kitchener Utilities customer has overpaid quite significantly in comparison to Union Gas and Enbridge over the last number of years. And essentially that's a means of at least saying something back to them, to saying, we want to make an effort to recognize that you have made additional payments. And so we have a little bit of room here to move. How far you would move obviously is up for debate. I guess it would come down to what you've got in your report of the impact of the 123 cent reduction in the fixed rates. If you take a look at what that does to the stabilization reserve level forecast, obviously there is a reduction, and it comes back to how much do you want this reserve level forecast to change as of December 2015. So the net result goes from an increase of $708,000 to a reduction of $35,770. So there certainly seems to be room in there. A 1 cent to 2 cent reduction certainly falls in line with that quite well. Even a 3 cent at what I would see as a very small amount of $35,000 on such a big number really leaves room to suggest that those sort of things can be done quite handily without too much of an impact. But again, it depends on how conservative council wants to be and what changes they want to do to benefit Kitchener Utility customer.
So are you agreeing with my recommendation?
I'm agreeing you're moving in the right direction. I guess it's up to council to determine how far they want to go, but I think, certainly there seems to be room between probably at least 1 cent to 2 cent should be quite easily on the table, I would expect.
Thank you.
Especially given the stability of rates as we're looking forward from what I can determine.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no other delegations. Thank you. Or no other speakers, rather.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
Okay, over to staff. Ms. Houston. Click your button, please. There were a number of concerns raised about, first of all, accounting rules, and then also some other challenges for the figures that have been given. Can you comment on those and anything else that you have as background?
I can comment on some of the balances that were referred to by the last delegation, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Chapman to talk about the accounting piece. I think the last delegation talked about the stabilization reserve at the end of 2015 as being the change that would occur. This is actually the balance that would be in the stabilization reserve at that point in time. And with a 3 cent reduction, we'd actually be in a negative balance. So I just wanted to correct that comment.
And so over to Mr. Chapman.
Through you, Mayor, I'd like to respond to the comments made by the delegation about the accounting standards and the financial reporting presentation on the part of the city. The city is obligated under law to report according to Public Sector Accounting Board standards issued by the Canadian Institute of Chartered Accountants. We do that. I'm pleased to say that in 2009, we adopted new standards which moved us closer to private sector accounting standards that required us for the first time in the history of municipalities to record all capital asset values on the balance sheet. As Mr. Duritz would know, it's simply a mathematical calculation to subtract liabilities from assets to arrive at equity or surplus. That's how the statements are prepared. Those are audited every year. We receive an unqualified audit opinion. And I would also note that the city has historically received the Government Award for Financial Reporting issued by the Government Financial Officers Association for certainly meeting standards and going above and beyond in the presentation of financial results.
Just a quick question, perhaps back to Ms. Houston. You referenced the balance of the reserves, and this is in the report, Wally's report from August the 20th. At December 15th, at a high of $708,000, a low of a negative position of $35,000. That refers to the balance in this particular reserve, and I think it was commented earlier by Councilor Fernandez, the minimum balance that we have established is about $4 million. Is that correct? In that reserve? Sorry, I didn't have to put you back on. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the minimum balance is roughly $4 million, or in the report we specifically said $3.7 million is the minimum balance.
Yeah, 3.7. Okay, we rounded up. Okay. Are there any? Yes, I think Councillor Gazzola, you had a question of staff, and so your microphone is still on, so go ahead.
Yeah, I have several questions. The first one, I was hoping to receive some more up-to-date information on how the gasworks has done for the first 7-8 months of the year, to try to get a feel for what we've experienced. So I guess in a way I don't see any details, but the tax stabilization reserve figure that you're showing on the third page.
The gas, you said tax, you meant gas? You said tax stabilization, you meant
no,
gas?
No, sorry, gas, yeah,
okay.
Sorry. But you show a figure of $5,728,000, whereas our budget figure was $4,478,000. Does that mean we're $1,250,000 ahead of where we expected to be, or where does that figure come from? And the same with the 708. Our budget figures showed $1,400,000.
Is that going to be Ms. Houston or Mr. Chapman? They're still looking. Go ahead. Mr. Chapman?
Through you, Mayor Zaire, that change is a function of the activity in the first part of the year. So as volumes were higher, more variable delivery rate would have been charged, and that would have impacted the margin in gas delivery, and so that would account for the difference. The projection through to 2015 is a reflection of the rate recommendation ahead of you. So we have taken the results year to date, modeled the rate impact or the recommendation that's before you, and projected out to the end of 2015 based on expected volumes where that stabilization reserve will end.
Okay, but the fact is that the $5,700,000 figure is better than we had budgeted, right?
Correct.
But then how does that erode then in 2015 from a $5,700,000 or a $5,400,000 figure down to the $708,000? That you've got totally different figures then for 2015 than was presented on budget day.
The 2015 budget presentation did anticipate that stabilization balance would erode. There was a reduction from $4.2 million to $1.2 million assumed in the budget, and what you have before you simply reflects 8 months of activity, more current projections of costs based on committed purchases, and revised rate recommendation that's before you at this point in time.
Do we have, at this point, do we have any idea of what our excess revenue is for the gas delivery portion for 7, 6, 7, 8 months? Or do we have any idea what? We budgeted for $10.7 million for the year. Where do we stand in relation to that?
Based on what we're projecting to the year end, it's $13 million instead of 10.
Okay, so that's the point I'm trying to. So we're going to do better this year than we budgeted, because we budgeted for 10.7. You're saying now it's going to be 13, which is a difference of 1.3 million. So we can.
The big challenge is with 2015 and the fact that the balance erodes.
I appreciate that, but at least right now we're ahead of the game. We're considerably ahead of the game. I'm trying to, rationalize giving the rates that I've come up with. So right now we're a bit ahead of the game. I'm not sure, when you did the budget at the beginning of the year, I thought you had said that you had made some adjustments for changes that were going to come down the pike. Were there any changes or not, or was it?
I think what you're referring to is related to the supply rate as opposed to the delivery rate.
Actually, you're right. But so when we did the budget, did we make some changes then in your budget projections?
Based on rate?
Yes. Here's what I'm driving at. The projected revenues for 2013 were about 35 million, and your projected revenue for 2014 is 33 million. That's on the budget that we approved. Now, if we're looking at the supply, we're looking at a 15% increase. So it's going to really go from 35 million to 37, 38 million. I was hoping that we would get sort of an up-to-date figure of where we're at to better understand, this.
I think, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I think one of the challenges, because you don't have that information, the thing that's contributing to the decline in 2015 is the level of the capital program, which is primarily due to replacement for LRT and for the new billing system and so on, which was approved as part of the capital budget process. So that's why you can't compare what 2014 looks like to 2015. You've got to take the whole program into account.
Yeah, but when you did the budget, you had projected figures for transfers to the gas tax investment reserve, which goes on to be transferred to capital. So you had that in there. Well, let's leave that. I have another bigger issue that I'm not clear on.
Councillor Gazzola, I know these questions will come out at some time, so I'm allowing you to go on, but you've gone way beyond 5 minutes.
Well, just let me finish this one up, and then I'll shut up. Okay? I would like to know the delivery rates are decreasing from 0.076992 to 0.066742. Is that correct? Step number one.
Whatever those rates were on the report. Are
Yeah.
you questioning what's the report?
Yeah. The current rate is 0.076992. That's step number one. I won't look at the other two steps. And we're going to 0.066 something.
Yes.
The point I'm making, if you just look at that figure, that rate charge, that rate is going down by 13%. Am I not right?
Sorry, you've taken yourself off. Perhaps Mr. Chapman and Ms. Houston, leave your buttons on, please.
Certainly. Councillor Gazzola, are you referring to Appendix A from the Finance Committee report, where it shows from step 1 to step 2?
Yeah, you go to that. I want to know.
Goes
I want
from
you to just to
6.67.
look at the new rate and look at look at the old rate and look at the new rate. What is the old rate? 0.076992?
I don't believe we have that in front of us.
I don't see that record, that figure on the report, Appendix A, which was 5-4.
Well,
you must be looking at it from some other page.
I guess I'm looking at the current rates. Yes, I'm looking. I looked at my bill. I looked at my tax.
Well, I wish, sometimes there's a lot of criticism of staff for not giving a lot of information. This would have been helpful. There's so many figures being bumped around that it would have been helpful to have good clarification on this prior to the meeting, because I don't think this kind of conversation is going to go anywhere. It really boils down to the reserve, and so that's the balance of the reserve. We're dealing with delivery only here.
I'm sorry, but I did not have an opportunity to go over this with staff. The point here is that your rates that you're recommending are decreasing by 13%. Your report says that the annual delivery charge now is $158.29 and it's going down to $152.09. Is that a 13% reduction?
Councillor Gazzola, I'm not totally following all your numbers, but the thing to keep in mind is that there's been a shift between fixed and variable rates. So the overall impact for the delivery rates is the same for the household. So the fact that one's moving in one direction, the other's in the other, it's not, you can't do a direct comparison like that unless you compare the overall charge. And I think the other thing that's pointed out in the report is that the delivery rate changes overall have a zero impact to Kitchener Utilities, and it's really a rate shift, cost allocation shift between one class of customer to another.
Well, to me, I don't agree with the figure that you're showing, or that Mr. Malcolm shows in his report, that I agree with the fixed rate charge will increase from $251.85 to $266.45, but I do not understand how you say the $158.29 only decreases to $152.09.
Apparently that's page 2 of the report, new report. Yes, page 2. So and I'm going to ask anybody who is referencing any numbers now, please reference a page number, because it is not good enough to simply rhyme off numbers. Well, we know what page 1 is, we know what page 2 is. Let's not quibble over that pages aren't numbered. Do you have anything further, Councillor Gazzola?
Well, I'll make my final recommendation if I could, and I'll make my comments, and then I'll leave it up to Council to deal with it. Okay. When this came to Council 2 weeks ago, I suggested that we could live with a fixed delivery charge of 70 cents instead of the 73 as being recommended by staff. I said that in doing that, it would result in an increase to the customer's bill of slightly under 2% and more in line with the rate of inflation. I have done all the calculations on a typical bill, and I find that quite frankly, the figure, I'm not able to come up with the figure of a 4.75% increase as staff has suggested. I'm seeing a lower figure, but I'm saying that we can well afford to do the 70-cent fixed charge and not have to go up to the 73 cent.
So you're staying with the 70 cents, is that correct?
I'm staying with the 70 cents. I know that every penny has 250 some odd thousand impact on our reserves. I think the reserves can well deal with that, especially now when I learned that we're $1.3 million more than we had expected to get without going into even the fall months. I don't think we've cheated our customers in the past. We had a different way of calculating things, and because of that, they did pay a little more than other areas. But this is an opportunity for us to perhaps give back a little bit of that, and at the same time to keep our rates closer to the inflation rate. And I know that the argument is made in the report that we can't do that. We can't. Natural gas prices are very volatile, and that'll be a very difficult thing to do all along. And I can appreciate that. But when we can do it, and I think this is an instant when we can do it and keep it close to the inflation rate, that we should do it. So I would urge all members of council to go along with the recommendation I've made.
Let's make sure that we know what portion of the rate we are dealing with tonight, and that is the delivery rate. That was the Yes, but the questions relate to the delivery rate. And if you go to unnumbered page 2 of the second report, you'll see that it is increasing, bottom of the page. The delivery rate is increasing by $8.41, which is 2.05%. That's the issue here. So I've got 2 more speakers at this point. I'm sure there will be more. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. I just have essentially
I'm going to put
one.
the timer on now. We're going to start getting back to our protocol. Okay.
That's fine. I haven't had a problem keeping within it. I just really wanted to have an understanding, again, reiterating for the public here that are here. We set our rates every year. That's correct, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So we are really looking at our stabilization fund, reserve fund, for 2014 up to December the 14th. And in that, we are, from the proposal of 73 cents all the way down to the 3-cent reduction, we are over the minimum benchmark of $4 million for our reserves, right?
Well, that's true. You also have to take into account 2015 because we only usually set our rates July 1st. This year it's September. So you can't just take the balance at the end of December 2014 into account. You have to really look at the whole year as well.
Then my question would be, why wouldn't we have seen a stabilization reserve level from June to June? Since we set our rates in June, why are we seeing it December? Because that really doesn't, that's confusing the numbers and confusing the issue, in my opinion.
Because our policy is based on a fiscal year, and our fiscal year is December.
Okay. So what I heard from Councillor Gazzola is that we are 1.3 million already over what we anticipated in revenue. And therefore, that could go into our stabilization fund. Or would it go as a transfer to capital?
I'd like to clarify that number is already built into these stabilization balances. We've projected till the end of the year based on that increase in revenue that we've experienced early in the year.
Okay, well, when I look at the budget number from page 58, I have here that our transfer to capital and excess of revenue over expenses was going to be 10.7 million. And I just heard you say that we were at 13 million. Did I not understand correctly?
Mr. Chap.
Through Mayor Zaire, if you're referring to 058, I would just draw your attention a line lower, where we were projecting in 2014 an ending stabilization balance of $4,244,000.
Mm-hmm.
If you refer to the staff report, at the current proposal, the ending position would be $5.7 million. So although not an exact comparison, you can see how our ending number for 2014 is better than what was anticipated in budget. And the primary explanation for that is the high volumes that we had in the winter heating season.
Right, okay. So I guess really what I'm getting to is essentially we have more revenue because we saw a heavy winter. Our stabilization reserve fund at the present time is sitting in a good position. Better, if I understood you correctly, Mr. Chapman, you said we're sitting better than we had anticipated in our budget.
That's correct, and we've set rates lower than would have been expected, such that that stabilization balance will largely be depleted by the end of the winter heating season in 2015. So as Ms. Houston's indicated, all of these factors were taken into consideration in setting the rate. The rate would have been higher than what's recommended had we not seen that positive result for the first part of this year.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Councillor Singh.
Yes, my apologies for flogging this to death, but still trying to make sure that with the option that's put before us, that we know all the implications that could derive from it. So with the recommendation of having the daily fixed rates at 70 cents as moved by Councillor Gazzola, that would put us into a negative reserve balance as of December 2015. by depleting the reserve entirely, what kind of repercussion would that mean? Can you play out a scenario where the necessity of having a healthy reserve balance is forward, and because that's not there, what could happen?
The implication will be that there'll be a larger increase in 2015.
If we have the same expected type of, I guess, as business operations, so if it's a similar type of winter we had last year, if you have a more milder winter, that means we could be in more serious
That's correct.
levels.
That's true.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Would it also, if the rate wasn't changed, that there would simply be less expenditures, fewer expenditures? In other words, because this is a factor, the chart on page 3 of this report is a factor of not only the revenue, the delivery revenue, but also the expenditures and capital, as you had just spoken earlier on. So therefore, and that's why it is going down to $708,000. So there are really two options in 2015. The rate spikes, or you have fewer expenditures.
Just keep in mind that many of the capital expenditures for 2015 are already committed to.
That's precisely going to be my point. I mean, that's the alternative. I mean, these are commitments, long-term commitments, and I think it really does boil down to one chart here, and that's the bottom of page 3. Do you want to jeopardize this, either the expenditures that we've made commitments for, which need to be done, or do you want to live with a spike in 2015? And this is one of the reasons why you have reserves, so that you don't have the spikes, and that's what is further up on that page, that very same page. It's the second bullet point. I have no other speakers at this point in time. There was a motion in part of our Finance and Corporate Services Committee report. I'm just looking for the number that was deferred. Someone finds it, help me out. It's number 5. It's number 5. So that was referred to this meeting, and the report, what you see on the yellow pages of our council agenda, if I'm correct, reflects the council or staff recommendation, except for the third paragraph, changes the rate from 73 cents to 70 cents, which was the motion that was brought forward by Councillor Gazzola at committee. So, are we clear on that? And if you wish, we can take this in parts. And Councillor Fernandez.
That was actually going to be my request, that we take it separately.
Okay. Recorded vote has been called for. We will deal with, we'll do it clause by clause. First clause. This is being brought forward by Councillor Davey, actually, so Councillor Davey has to bring it forward initially, which you've done, and seconded by, is it on the sheet already? Councillor Singh. Okay, now recorded vote, and we'll deal with it clause by clause. And we're dealing with the rate change from to 19 cents from 16.5. This is the commodity only. Do we now vote? Just before you show that, I didn't see Councillor Ioannidis here. Was that a speaking? Okay. All right. Okay, go ahead. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm still on the speaker's queue. It was unanimous. Thank you. Clause 2, which is the transportation component, which is a decrease to 3 cents from 4 cents. You may now vote. No, the screen was, you hadn't cleared it before you took the vote. I assume that's going to be unanimous. That is unanimous. Clause 3, which is the reduction of the delivery rate from the proposed 73 cents to 70 cents. No, it was all moved. It's part of the recommendation. You may now vote. Those in favor? Those opposed? Okay, we'll have to correct Councillor Inez. Okay. Motion fails in any event. Do I hear another motion? Sorry, Councillor Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I realize I understand the implication of depleting a reserve, and I try to make that point with staff explaining it further. And that's why I can support the motion proposed by Councillor Gazzola, because that would have taken us to a negative reserve, and that's too severe of an impact implication. But I think if we have an opportunity to give some relief, I think it is an opportunity, and I would propose a 1% reduction. That would still have some ramifications. I understand that.
Correction,
but I think,
correction. You said a 1%. You meant a 1 cent.
My apologies, 1 cent reduction. Okay. So it would be 0.072 as opposed to the 0.073. So I understand that would have some implications, but I think it's within the parameter of risk, and I would hope that I would receive support.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Fernandez. And there are several speakers. Councillor Fernandez. Oops, Councillor Gazzola.
What about Councillor Galloway-Sealog?
Yeah, we're in the game.
You jumped up.
We're into
hang on a second.
I believe I was second.
Yeah, you were actually. Something happened. They both went up at the same time. Councillor Galloway-Sealog.
Yeah. I'm concerned after, and I didn't speak to the last one because I was hoping it was far enough removed that council would make the right decision moving forward. My concern is that we're having a small lens on this. We're thinking small, short term, when really we need to look long term. And what this is going to do, even that 1 cent, and I understand 1 cent is important, it equals dollars. I get that. But I think realistically we have to listen to our experts and listen to staff, because this is going to allow us to continue to move along with a stabilization reserve and be able to stabilize rates moving forward and have that ability if there is a rainy day. We're talking the difference of from $700,000 to $460,000 in a reserve. And that's significant if we need to ever provide relief to our customers. So I think we have to look bigger picture to this, and really, staff have already explained that by every year we get to reset our rates, and if there's ever surpluses, that we're able to give that relief on a yearly rate. And I think that that's the opportunity to do it. Staff have already accounted those surpluses in to this rate, and we've heard that our rates would have been higher if we hadn't taken those into account. So I think we really need to look at the bigger, longer-term picture when it comes to this, and really trust our experts. That's why we hire them, and move forward with the proposal that they've put forward.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I'm going to support the figure that's been put forward, not because I believe in it, but it is something for our ratepayers. Unfortunately, we're really making a decision in the dark here because you don't have the figures. I'm working, trying to go back and base my figures on the budget that we approved and the projections that went ahead for 5, 6, 7 years. You're looking at a figure here that's come out all of a sudden out of the blue. The figure appears. We haven't had any financial statements or one earlier in the year, but we really don't know what's going on. But we're told by staff that our reserves, our surplus for this year, is 1.3 higher than we expected. That's without looking at any of the information. And now we're saying all of a sudden we got to worry about next year. I really question some of the figures that staff have put forward. I will support this recommendation, trying to get something for our users.
I'll make one comment. I will not be supporting the 72 cents. Yes, the reduction of 1 cent to 72. If you look at, again, page 4 of our report, the middle of the page, the reference for every $250,000 reduction, which is essentially what that difference is. It equates to 5 city blocks with approximately 100 services not being replaced. And it's our infrastructure that we are so concerned about. And we do have the latest figures, and that's page 2. You don't have all the detail backing it up. But unless you say that you distrust staff, those are the latest figures. That is the bottom line. This is related only to delivery. Councillor Davey.
So I will be brief as well. I'm not going to support the reduction. I think my concern is that staff put forward the rationale that it's cost recovery, and I think changing a specific figure, as Councillor Gazzola said, is somewhat in the dark. I'm also concerned about the level of the stabilization reserve going forward, but what bothers me most about this sort of rhetoric is there's this sense that I keep hearing of giving back some of the costs that were over and above in years previous. And the problem there is there's this sense out there that, yes, there's a huge delta, and there was mistakes made prior to this term of council even. Well, not mistakes, I would say, a different rate model approach that ended up costing significantly more. And there's a perception out there that the city of Kitchener got this money. And it's been said over and over and over again that the rate discrepancy is not some big pile of money the city of Kitchener has somewhere that we should be giving back. That money is gone to the people that sold us the gas. So when you start doing things like this, you're perpetuating the myth that the city of Kitchener somehow overcharged people, when we didn't overcharge people. We didn't make any extra revenue from the rate discrepancy. It was the model that was in place, and all of those extra finances passed outside of the city of Kitchener. So I will be supporting staff's recommendation.
Councillor Verbanovich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I too won't be supporting the recommendation in front of us for a couple of reasons. I mean, I think first and foremost, it's important to remember we've just made some changes to our overall rate model with respect to the utility in a way that I believe was the right way, in that it's going to more accurately reflect what we heard from our customers as to how they'd like to see rates structured in the future. On this particular component of the rate, for me, it's absolutely clear that we as a council need to walk the talk. Yes, it's politically convenient in the months before an election to say, let's go in and cut infrastructure dollars and put that burden on future generations. I'm not prepared to do that. We know we have an infrastructure deficit. We know that dealing with infrastructure is something that our citizens identified as a priority in our Environic survey, and to now say that we're going to cut that, to me, just does not make good fiscal sense.
Are there any other speakers other than the mover of the 72 cents? I'll take those first. Councillor Glenn Graham.
A 1 cent reduction for 1 year does not endanger future generations. I will support the motion before us.
Councillor Inetsky.
Yes, I supported the initial 3 cent reduction, and I was disappointed it wasn't supported. I am going to be prepared to support the 1% reduction because I still think it's a wise move to make, and they'll have not that much of an impact as some people may have been concerned about. Now, since we seem to have some extra money that seems to be in the reserve than was anticipated, and I am relying on the expertise that staff has have in their knowledge, because they are experts in this field. But I also have to take comments that Councillor Gazzola is an expert in this field with much more years of education, and I think his holds more weight.
Okay. Recorded vote. We're now dealing on the 72 cent rate. 72 cents. You can now vote. Those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is lost. I guess perhaps Councillor Davey, yes, go back to you.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
73 cents, moved and seconded. Recorded vote. You can now vote. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, we have another delegation on clause, this is 8B, the other unfinished business, 8B. Tricia Wharton. This has to do with the on-street parking regulations in Commonwealth Street.
Hello, good evening again.
Welcome.
This just came to my attention a little bit later this afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to really put too much into this, but it concerns me as a resident of the area, and I was just wondering if you can direct your attention to the maps included on 8B-4 and 8B-5. Unfortunately, with the way they're presented, you don't get the section of Commonwealth Crescent at the bottom and Isabella and the streets that go to the left of that. You get the ones to the right. The concern is that there is a recommendation with respect to what they're going to do with parking here because of the issues during the school day. If you'll take a note of the properties on Commonwealth Crescent, Commonwealth Street and Isabella and fronting onto Max Becker surrounding the school, you'll notice that there is definitely an issue with respect to lack of frontage. These are very small properties in comparison to the right side where you see Frey Crescent and Helena Feasby. And there is obviously a huge density involved with respect to the homes that are there. So as far as parking concerns go, this is a huge issue for this whole area. They're all being new houses. They don't have a lot of frontage on them. And in this particular case, during out the school day, parents drive their kids to school. They park on both sides of the road so that you virtually cannot pass through. So there are definitely some issues with respect to getting by. There was obviously somebody who had a concern about this and were indicating that they had difficulty accessing their property. I have that on a regular basis. I know that if I'm trying to leave my house, I better not do it within about a 15-minute window of when people are coming to that school, because I'm going to be sitting there waiting for kids to be walking back and forth, and cannot probably get out of my driveway because people are parked in front of it. That's just a reality of the world that I find that I'm in because of the nature of being close to a school like that in this particular neighborhood. My concern is the fact of that they did go and talk from the Transportation Department to the people who are directly living on Commonwealth Street, who are obviously directly impacted by instituting additional non-stopping areas. The issue I run across is the fact that they seem to have gone counter to what makes common sense. Kids run back and forth across there. They're really little, and they do run out in front of parked cars because there is no room through there. So the recommendation of moving the non-parking to the side of the street where you are not closest to the school and having the children cross the street, I have some real concerns with, because I see the kids across there all the time. And the problem extends not just on Commonwealth Street, as you see the map, but if you continue around Commonwealth Crescent, there is another walkway that goes to the school. And the part that was not addressed here is that there was at no point any arrangement made to discuss the residents who will be continuing to be affected by this on Commonwealth Crescent and Isabella Street. Because if you effectively remove about, 30 or so parking spaces, they don't indicate in here how many there are, from Commonwealth Street itself, then where do these people go? They're still going to be there trying to drive their kids to school. People don't walk anymore. They all drive to school. So you've just moved the problem around the corner. Commonwealth Crescent already has that issue. The people on Isabella do not at this point. But basically all you're doing is you're moving the traffic back and over one street. So my concern is that the residents on Commonwealth Crescent and Isabella were not consulted on this issue at all. And yet a decision is being made which will now move the problem onto their backyard, as they call it, instead of the people just sitting on Commonwealth Street themselves. I don't know how one addresses this directly in terms of coming with a resolution. You're obviously responding to one individual who had this concern. It's going to be another concern you're going to hear back from many, many other residents in this community because they will now be facing it on all the other streets. So I wish I had a really easy answer for you. It should have been done when the school was planned in the first place to allow a drive-through for drop-off purposes, but it wasn't done. So I just wanted to bring that to your recommendation to give some serious thought as to which side of the street you're obviously going to go ahead, which side of the street you do this for the safety of the children involved. The adults can figure this out. They can slow down. They can drive around it, but it's the little kids who dart out in and around, and there's just no room for them that need to be taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you. I think there may be more than one question, but there is one. Councillor Galloway-Sela.
Yeah, can you just, I'm not needing your address, but can you tell us which street that you live on?
I live on Commonwealth Crescent.
Okay.
And I encounter these concerns.
Yeah, and that's fair, and I've heard that as the ward councillor that Commonwealth has similar issues as well. I thought I heard in your presentation that you were suggesting that can you review what you said about contrary to the path that we were going? You were suggesting that, I'm trying to make sure that you're clear on the recommendation because it did change from the staff report to like the initial staff report to
That's
now.
right, and it's a bit confusing because they're also doing the double negative kind of thing, which does indicate an issue when somebody is sometimes placing a vote, that they may vote on one thing thinking they're voting and get something else. So I just wanted to be clear that my concern for all of this, because it's really just going to move the problem around the block, is that when you look at it, and they've also got the streets wrong here and saying north and south, they're actually east-west, so it's a bit confusing as well. That my understanding is the current position is that they prohibit stopping on the south side of common law, which would be the left side. If you're looking at Commonwealth Street, to me it would be the left side, between Max Becker and extending through to Commonwealth Street. That's the side where children would be able to get out and go directly onto the sidewalk, go to the walkway, and go into school.
Okay.
So the recommendation is against what seems to make common sense, which would be the other side of the street, so that kids are actually having to cross the street. So
You're suggesting the kids should have to cross the street or they shouldn't?
According to what I'm understanding here, the recommendation is that they are being asked to cross the street.
That's what's changed, and that's actually what the residents have suggested. We had a resident come forward in the last meeting and ask that, so I'll talk school side versus not school side, just so that we're clear, instead of east and north.
Okay.
Initially, staff's recommendation was to come forward and prohibit parking on the school side of the street. And now the recommendation coming forward from staff, because the residents have spoken and we see the results of the report, that prohibiting parking is now on the side of the street that's away from the school.
Right.
And that's what you would be supportive of, so that the kids don't have to cross the street to get to the path.
Yeah.
Am I understanding you correctly?
Just making sure I get the double negatives right there. Yes, so that on the school side of the street there is parking allowed,
right,
and on the non-school side of the street there is no parking.
Right.
That's correct.
And that's what's being presented here before us today. And I understand, I guess I have comments, so I
was just going to ask reference to that. Is there any expectation that that rule will then start moving around the block to the next Commonwealth, to Isabella, to the other streets that will be impacted down the road with respect to putting these signs up?
I would have to defer that to traffic staff, but my assumption would be yes, that it will filter the problem. And I was going to save it for my comments, but I can quickly say it now, is having been in the area when school does come out, I know that it continues all the way up Commonwealth beyond Max Becker, and it filters all throughout the community. And I think it's a larger problem that we need to continue to look at with regards to schools in residential communities.
Yeah, because it is a very big issue, and we get bylaw people down there all the time ticketing people, and they really do not have options, which is part of the concern.
Okay, any further questions? Yes, there is one more question. Councillor Yanetsky from Ms. Wharton.
Yeah, a couple of questions. I didn't quite catch your answer. You lived on Commonwealth Street or Commonwealth Crescent?
Commonwealth Crescent.
Okay, at the
So on the
bottom
bottom,
of the map.
and then you can't see it, but it actually goes to the left of Isabella Street, so it actually goes around all the way out there and then comes back again. So it's actually a very big street.
It goes around the school sort of thing?
It goes around the school,
But you got Isabella Street there.
and then you have Isabella, but it also goes
Much
around the
further
other
to the
side of Isabella, which you can't see on the map, but if you could see it, it actually runs all the way around, so you actually have people going all the way around this whole community trying to find places to park.
Okay.
Okay, that's what I want to say, where the school fronts onto is Commonwealth Crescent as well. Okay.
Right.
So I read this and I see the recommendation, yet I see in the two maps, this is option A and option B, yet I don't see any of that in the recommendation. So that's where I was getting confused.
Right,
So
it would have been very straightforward if they just put option A, such and such, this is the recommendation, or option B, they've made it a little bit.
So as I see it, we're going with option B in the recommendation, right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
So are you asking for a revisit of this, or are you satisfied with the answer so far?
I guess I'm just stating a concern that I have, because this is, especially if this gets continued and the same policy gets put in place in Commonwealth Crescent and Isabella, I honestly don't know where people are going to go. And it's just a stating concern as a resident of, I wish I had a magic answer to this one, but it's going to be a huge issue for where to put people.
Based on your comment earlier that the circulation should have been a wider range of a circulation, right?
Yes.
So are you looking that maybe we should defer this item and have it further recirculated to the other residents and come back with another report?
I think to some extent that would make sense, because this is something that's going to affect an awful lot of residents, and not just the 49 households that are affected on Commonwealth Street. And again, that's affected by the people who maybe took the most interest in coming out to have a recommendation there. I don't know. But certainly this is going to be, given because you do have the school right in the center here, it's not going to affect the other side streets so much, but there are options that people can come through with the walkways on Frey Crescent, for example, or up on Copperleaf, which is even further to the west with another walkway. So just maybe bringing some of those ideas into how this could be rectified for the whole community may not be a bad idea with respect to a referral, if it's not a huge issue. I don't know how big an issue this is to revisit, but perhaps further input would be useful.
Okay, thank you. I'd be prepared to make a motion of deferral for staff to review this once again at the appropriate time.
Any further questions for Ms. Wharton? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Galloway Seelot.
Yeah, as the ward councillor for the area, I would respectfully ask you to remove your deferral, simply because this is a safety concern. And I don't disagree with Tricia that it could potentially, or will probably have concerns for other streets. But I think we need to look at them independently and see the outcome of this change and be able to then look at those streets as well. I've heard about problems on Commonwealth Crescent that aren't different than Commonwealth Street. But the big problem with Commonwealth Street is it's a through street. And if people can't access and get through, it creates a big problem because that street actually connects to Bleams Road, which gets people out of the community. It connects to Max Becker Drive, which gets people out of the community. And so it's a much more, it's not a major road, but it's more of a major road than the Crescent or Isabella Street. And like I said, I'm willing to look at those. If residents bring forward those concerns, that there's too much and they have the same problems, I'm willing to look at those and look at them with staff as well. But I think we really need to move forward. We had a delegation here at the committee who talked about the safety concerns and being a resident on that street and the safety concerns. So I respectfully ask you to remove the deferral, and I think it's also important, having spoken to a few residents on that street, I need to make it clear there's one resident who is completely opposed to any regulations and wants to keep it as status quo, and I told him I would make sure that his opinion was heard. I thought it would end up in the report, but it didn't. So there was one completely opposed to any changes, wanted status quo. So I did hear of that as well. But I do think for the safety not only of the students, but people traveling on that street, we need to move forward with this recommendation, and we can look at the other streets and the impacts moving forward. And I do believe overall this is a concern. And I know Councillor Ioannidis is working with the school boards to try and look at a comprehensive approach that can be used across the city, because this isn't a concern, as we have other ones coming up later in our discussion tonight, that this is a city-wide concern. And whenever there's a school in residential areas, we're finding the exact same problem. And we've got to come up with more creative solutions than just continuing this. And I see these parking regulations as being interim steps until we can come up with more comprehensive ways of dealing with this moving forward.
Councillor Yunetsky, do you wish to bring forward the deferral?
Having heard her comments, I can understand her position. I'm also concerned about the safety issues of this school, as would be any other school throughout the whole city. And basically, as I see what's happening, as I would see it, is that the problem is maybe being pushed from one street over to the other. And having heard the delegation, I still feel that you should go forward with the deferral and ask for staff to further review this, because I don't want to come back here having this approved and then come back because the residents now on the other streets are all ticked off. And then we're going to be revisiting it again. So let's just do it right now.
Okay. Does your deferral motion give it should have a time? And it's debatable only 2 times.
Well, time's going to be difficult because the next committee meeting's in for committees in 2 weeks, and as pointed out Mr. May, it means staff report has to be done by Thursday. And how are you going to do a circulation, etc.? So I'm going to bump it out to the next committee meeting, so you're looking to November, unfortunately.
So November 10th is the date in the deferral motion. It's debatable only as to time. Seeing no speakers, we'll vote on the deferral. Okay. This is on the deferral. Those in favor of the deferral? Those opposed? The deferral is lost. Councillor Galloway Seelock, do you wish to bring forward the recommended option? Okay. So, and it's moved by Councillor Galloway Seelock, seconded by Councillor Singh. Those in favour? Opposed? The motion is carried. We'll now proceed to the tenders. Is there a mover of the tenders? By Councillor Urbanovich, seconded by Councillor Glenn Graham. And as we have done several times now, I'll go through them one at a time so we're not bouncing back and forth. Stahl Avenue Consultants, Staley, I guess it would be. Yes, Councillor Fernandez.
Just need understanding about the transfer of the monies from the Accelerated Infrastructure Replacement Program. I see that we were over budget on this by $29,000. I guess my question is this going to be something that we'll see happening if we're over budget on items that we're going to be drawing from the Accelerated Infrastructure Replacement Program? And is this a practice that we should be doing?
Mr. Chapman.
Through Mayor's Air, yes, it is, and it has been. So just as when we have favorable variances on tenders that are funded through that program, the surpluses go back to this account. When we have deficits, they're funded from this account. I think on balance this year, more has gone back into the account than has been drawn out from it.
Okay, I apologize. I hadn't noticed this. It's the first time I had noticed it, but okay, that's all. Thank you.
Consultant services for the comprehensive review of off-street parking. See, Councillor Fernandez.
I'm just kind of curious to know why we would need to hire a consultant. We've got so much information. Staff has been doing a tremendous amount of work on transportation studies and reviews, and I mean, I think they're very well versed in what's happening within our transportation department. I think that it's an unnecessary expenditure, and I'd like to. I'm not going to support it at this time.
Mr. Wilmer.
Through the Mayor, anytime we involve a consultant, it's either because we need their expertise or their capacity. In this case, it's a combination, but primarily the capacity issue. You will note in the background it says that most of the Crosby work is being done by city staff. This is one exception to that.
Councillor Dianetsky.
Well, I also had concerns on this because I'm familiar with the preparation of zoning bylaws and how the traffic component works with it. And traffic staff are strong experts in knowing this. Having heard Mr. Wilmer's response in terms of more details, that provides another element of a comment or another element in terms of the decision making. So I appreciate his comments on that. Thanks.
Councillor Ioannidis.
My question regarding this is this involving the entire city?
Through the Mayor, yes, it is.
So how many streets do we have in the city?
So through the Mayor, this isn't a site-specific or street-specific issue. This is a general issue about parking requirements, minimums, maximums, and how they may influence transportation choices.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We'll now go on. 3 sand and salt spreaders. Councillor Gazzola.
I just wanted to know what the lowest bidder didn't get this bid because of some shortcomings. I'm just curious as to what kind of specs we currently have for that equipment. Are the specs being changed for this new equipment?
Mr. Whitmer, I presume? Oh, yes. Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the specs are not being changed. These are specs which are consistent with the balance of the fleet that we have.
Okay, if that's good. I don't understand the first point that talks about chunks of wood or rocks are stuck in the hopper. How does that happen?
When through you, Mr. Mayor, when the material is mined, it's not always comes in 100% clean because it is rock salt. So if there is debris that's associated with that, we have to be able to access it for the purposes of removal in order for it not to damage the equipment. when it's loaded by our front-end loader.
I trust we get that at a good price, and
We do.
okay, thank you.
Roland Street Bridge replacement. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Chair, question to staff. Can they tell me when the bridge will be built and when was the old one constructed?
Mr. Whitwer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't give you an answer on how old the bridge is. The plan is to replace it as quickly as possible based on this tender, which I would assume is either later this year or next year, based on availability of construction.
And my other question, I presume it's because Canadian standards were different at that time. Why was it built this way with problems?
Well, as you indicated through you, Mr. Mayor, the standards have changed, and our obligation is to ensure that our bridges meet the new standards that are there. And engineering design principles, although the principles are fairly the same, there are different requirements associated with steel and manufacturing that we have to adhere to, and wear and tear. As time goes on, the bridge will deteriorate, and we'll need to replace in accordance. Regulations for guards and so forth, as you are aware, when we did the Roos bridge, changed significantly, and we had to put that through Heritage Kitchener in order to get a design which is safe, but also matched the needs of Heritage Kitchener and the aesthetic values associated with that bridge.
Thank you.
Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I'm just curious on this project. We have a budget of $76,000, and now we're dealing with a tender of $156,000. We're 100% off of our budget. Should we not be looking at this again, or? Whoa, that's quite a discrepancy.
Mr. Whitmer, or no, Wilmer, I guess.
You'll note in the financial implications it says the original budget did not include the foundation removal and replacement, so it is a larger project now than it was originally budgeted for.
So is that $80,000 for that?
Yes, we're not surprised with the scope of with the magnitude of the bids.
SAP, Corporate Customer Relationship and Billing. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I was curious as to whether there's an offshoot of this where it's possible that we may be make some dollars from the intellectual property model. Is that taken into consideration in our decision going with this company?
Mr. Chapman.
Through you, Mayor Zaire, I assume you're referring to the paragraph towards the bottom of page 3 of the tender report?
Yes.
No, Councillor Gazzola, that was provided for information only as it represents a potential future opportunity with the recommended vendor. It does not have any bearing on the financial summary which is included in the staff report immediately above it, and nor did it form any part of the formal evaluation by the selection committee.
Thank you. The other question I had, this is to do with a software package that we're getting from SAP. I'm just curious as to why we wouldn't go to SAP and why they wouldn't be the best price.
Mr. Chapman.
Again, through the Mayor, I can't comment on that except to say that it is very commonplace in the industry for enterprise applications like this, that the vendor does provide some consulting services and will offer to implement, but quite often there are large consulting firms that specialize in that practice and have developed quite a market for their services.
Will the firm that we hire, will they have to be going back and forth to SAP, or are they expected to install that product as is?
Through the chair, our expectation is that any firm that has experience in this field certainly would have relationships with SAP such that there's a connection there. But any qualified firm will have implemented this functionality many times over, so they're very familiar with how to configure and implement this module.
And my final question, this is a huge project, $13 million. Have we seen, has this firm done similar work in our province, or, you know?
Yes, we're satisfied based on the quality of their experience that they do have considerable experience implementing this functionality in certainly across the utility sector. I think, as we've noted before, implementing the municipal property tax functionality within this system is somewhat new, and so no vendor that we've seen has experience implementing that functionality, but we're satisfied that they've been able to articulate an approach that makes sense to us.
Okay, thank you.
Council, okay. Trail construction, Walter Bean, the Bingham Trail. Okay, Councilor Gazzola.
Now, I'm just curious as to, if they do that leg of the trail, are there any other legs left to complete?
Yes, there are.
There are?
Mr. Whitmer.
Yes, there are.
Are there many, or what's...
There are issues with respect to trail segments which are not in lands that are currently owned by the City of Kitchener, where we would like to see trails be put in place, and that is something that we are actively working on, but we don't have a solution yet.
How many are there that are still up, that we're still working on? Just, you know, if we look at a percentage of the total length of the thing, are we looking at a 10% that still have to be settled, or?
I'm not sure I can give you a percentage, but I can give you a couple of locations. Freeport, the gravel pit that's on Forwell Road. There's an area that's associated with Natchez, I believe. So there's some significant locations that will require some lengthy trail segments in order to complete the link. We are using on-road areas now, so there is a continuous path, but it's not along the river, which was the original design.
Yeah, thank you. You get lost and you get on the road. So,
Next tender are 3 units of snow and ice removal equipment. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yeah, just trying to understand. When we're talking 3 units, we're talking that consists of a dump box, a wing, and a front plow. This is just the parts that are on the existing cab, and the cab is still in good condition. It's just that those other 3 parts here need to be replaced. Is this the way I would read it? And that would apply to 3 vehicles? Or are we talking the entire truck?
Whitmer? Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've purchased the cab already. This is the equipment that makes it into a dump truck with a wing and a plow and other attachments. So you don't buy it off the shelf where you have all these pieces of equipment at one shop. You end up buying the chassis for it, and then you outfit it with the pieces of equipment that are necessary to make it the piece of equipment that you really want at the very end, which is adding the dump box to it, the wing and the plow that's associated with making it a snowplow.
Okay, so the chassis itself is a new 3 new vehicles that we've had purchased before, or are they going to be existing ones?
That was at the front end of these tenders.
I'm sorry?
We did an earlier tender tonight. Oh. An earlier tender tonight.
Oh, okay.
So my apologies. We've acquired this equipment. I was thinking of something else. We've acquired this equipment previously. It is the chassis that have been ordered. This is the equipment that is required to outfit them now.
Yeah, okay, appreciate that. Thanks.
Consultant services for, sorry, Councillor Gazzola, on that same item?
Yeah, there was only one bid. I'm curious, are our specs too stringent or what, when there's only one bid that comes in?
Mr. Gordon, okay.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. There in the past were a couple of companies that were producing this equipment, and we are actually down to Viking Survey is the remaining one in the business in our area now.
Okay, Councillor Singh and Davey, are you on that the next item? Okay. This is on the impact analysis and economic development. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, quickly, Mayor Zaire. So, question to staff, like over even just this term of council, we received numerous reports, pretty in-depth, in detail, outlining the benefits received through the investments through economic development and the Economic Development Fund. So, what's the necessity of going further and outsourcing this to a consultant when it appears that we have a lot of this data already in hand?
Mr. Regier.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Zaire. We had brought forward this concept and had been actually requested by council to take an analysis of EDIF to a third party as part of the 2014 budget process in those discussions, and we're now ready to implement that work. You're right, we have invested a significant amount in staff analysis of that process. We have tested our own analytical method with a number of academics to make sure that we were on the right track. However, all of the work that we've done up to this point has been entirely generated by staff, and at the end of the 10-year life of EDIF, we felt it was prudent to have an external review done so that we had a dispassionate, non-invested set of eyes on the project. We've got a terrific consultancy that specializes in specifically this type of analytical work across North America, and we're confident we'll get that they'll add additional information and a fresh perspective on the work. I might say that to put it into context, the next council we hope to bring forward or participate in another economic development strategy process. A new KEDS will be formulated with the new council in 2015, and one of the questions that the new council will need to deal with is how to continue to build the city's capacity to invest in strategic catalytic projects in economic development, and this piece of work will be helpful in informing that discussion with the new council. So we think it'll generate some fresh ideas and a new perspective for the new council.
Okay, just one final question. I'm afraid that, after spending $80,000, we may very well get the same type of data that we already have in-house. But I appreciate that you're looking to get a fresh outside perspective on this as well. Can't we leverage on the in-house expertise that we have? I'm referring to the universities, especially Wilfrid Laurier through their business department, and in reaching out to them to see if they may want to do some study informally, or doing the similar work that's being requested through a consultant?
First of all, I guess I would say that we will absolutely make sure that the consultant does not waste any time or effort recreating data that we've already crunched. So they will have access to the data and the analytical work that we've already produced. And in fact, I think the consultant that we've selected here actually had a fairly good look at our previous reports, so understand the nature of the challenge that they're being presented with. As I mentioned, we have discussed EDIF extensively with the academic community, with the School of Economics and Business at Wilfrid Laurier and at Waterloo. It's not impossible to do. To tap into some graduate student expertise, but it's because it's student and academic, their timelines are sometimes different, and if it's student work, we're not absolutely certain of the quality. So this would be our preferred method for getting a reliable third-party view.
If you were hiring me, I'd say just go outside and look at the cranes, but that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor Zaire. My questions were asked, but I would ask that we could vote on this separately and like to comment.
Okay. Councillor Fernandez?
Ditto. I'd like to have it voted on separately as well.
Okay. Councillor Yunetsky?
Yeah, same thing. I had the same questions, and I know staff has done their work, and each time something related comes to it, and all the accolades of the Edith Fund that has been done is always presented by staff, and one way or the other, so I always wonder why we need further justification.
Okay, there are no other speakers. That's the only tender that was asked to be dealt with separately, so we'll deal with that one now. Which one other?
Consulting services on the parking, I believe it was. Yes.
Page?
Page 1II-1. The second tender.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll deal with, first of all, the consultant service for the economic impact analysis. Those in favor? Sorry. Okay. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to comment on this because I didn't want my vote to be misconstrued, but I went back and read the budget, the issue paper is referred to, and I'm sort of glad to hear actually it was requested by council, because I'm not sure who exactly requested it, but my concern here is I'm not sure how, and I heard staff's explanation, and as much as I would really like a post-mortem on Edith, the fact of the matter is Edith, in my opinion, was extremely successful, and I'm not sure how the information coming out of it now would be benefit going forward. I don't think there's any appetite for an Edith 2 at this stage, maybe at some distant time in the future, and perhaps that's an appropriate time to have look back and see the outcomes of Edith. But I think Edith was wildly successful, and be absolutely clear on that. But by the same token, economic development is one of the most important areas of the city, I think, going forward. And I would really rather see this amount of money stay back in that in the economic development account for future initiatives. I don't think that we'll get quite the bang for the buck with respect to this report.
Councillor Ioannidis.
You know, I would agree with you a little bit there with Councillor Davey, but I think it's important to the perspective that it's been questioned among council members here, the validity of that information. So I think it's important that a third party analyze the data and come up with a non-biased solution, as Mr. Regier had put forward. And I think it's incumbent and prudent of us as a council to make sure we are in the right direction, and having a new council in the next term, having a third party review instead of just hearing it from staff.
Councillor Fernandez.
I think that the timing is not correct for consultant services. We really just are coming out of Edith, and I'd like to see what the lay of the land is. I want to see how things fall into place in the next couple of years. I think this is just really an effort to prepare the next council for another possible Edith suggestion, and I don't have an appetite for it, but who knows if I'll be sitting here. So I won't be supporting this at this time.
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I actually have a question of staff, if you can indulge me. It's one question.
All right.
Is there the opportunity to revise or reduce the scope of work with regards to this? Because I think, from my perspective, it's a report I think we need, but the cost is seems fairly high for a post-mortem on this. So is there an opportunity to relook at the scope and maybe reduce it in order to get a more favorable price? When you think of it's $75,000.
Yeah. I'm sorry I didn't bring the terms of reference and the proposal with me. I can tell you that the presentation of the work that was brought to us involved extensive senior consulting services, and there was a consensus at the committee that we had a good value proposition, that it was going to deliver much more than simply a run through an economic model for the results, and it involved considerable on the ground interview time with stakeholders with our business community to disentangle all of the various mechanisms that Edith that were at play in ultimately creating or flowing out of the investments that we made as a city. I can take a look at the scope of work. We thought it was a good, comprehensive piece of business. The proposal was well done and made sense in its entirety. But perhaps I can take a look at it from the point of view of chunks of it that may or may not be as valuable.
I think with regards to this, and just because it does seem like a large figure for this type of analysis, that we need to understand the outcomes and what we're going to get for this money. And I understand that we typically don't get into the terms of reference, like we've set the direction to go forward with this tender, but I think we need to understand what the outcomes are going to get so that we understand the value for the dollar on this one. I think it's important. So I would look to actually defer this until the next council meeting so that we can take a look at what those outcomes are and ask staff to come back with the potential of a revised scope of work if it looks as though the outcomes aren't going to be something that just look at different outcomes so that we have a different package we might be able to potentially work with this tender.
Okay, I have two other speakers, so I'll go to them and then come back to you for the deferral.
Yep.
Councillor Urbanovich.
Thanks. I actually was going to suggest a deferral as well, so I will support that.
Councillor Etherington.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. In my ward, I'm surrounded by the fantastic benefits of and results of Edith. I can see them with my own two eyes. I don't need a $80,000 consultant report to tell me that. I'm not even sure I would support a deferral. I don't think there's any need for this or a diluted report. I think Edith has been successful. We know it's been successful. And I think we should wait for the new council, for them councillors to decide if they want more detail on Edith. I don't think they will require any more detail than what we've got now.
Okay. Now, Councillor Galway-Seelock, your motion of deferral would be to get that additional information and bring it back for September the 15th, which is the next council. Okay. Is there a seconder for that deferral? Councillor Urbanovich. Those in favour of the deferral? Recorded vote has been called for. You may now vote. Okay. Those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. This is for the deferral. Going back to the consultant services on the comprehensive review of the off-street parking and loading. I've been asked to take separately. Those in favor? Sorry, let me see those hands again while I look around. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Balance of the tenders, those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now move on to the committee reports. Remind you that it is 10:30 at this point. Community and Infrastructure Services, Councillor Ioannidis.
It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Frank Etherington that the report of the Community and Infrastructure Service Committee be adopted from items 1 through 12.
Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Finance and Corporate Services Committee, We have dealt with number 5. Number 6 has a conflict, which we will take separately. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Singh that those remaining items 1 through 6, less 5, be approved. But actually, on that point, I think we have to have a different seconder for number 6. Okay, number 6 is seconded by Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Okay. Councillor Gazzola.
I wanted to deal with number 4 separately, and we're going to deal with 6 separately anyhow, right?
We're dealing with 6 separately, yes?
And 4 also.
All right. Councillor Fernandez.
That was my request as well, but I'd like a recorded vote for number 4.
Okay. So we'll deal with those votes now. We will take item number 4, and a recorded vote has been called for. Councillor Gazzola, you wish to speak on that?
To speak on it. I will not support this. I don't think this is the time to be making these types of recommendations. It may well be a very good recommendation, but it's something that's going to affect a new council, and it should be left until the new council is on board to make the decision.
Okay. I will be supporting the recommendation because I think it's precisely the right time to do it, because this council has knowledge of these issues. A new council would be, there will be some new, and therefore not everyone will be on the same footing when they would be dealing with it in the early part of that term. So recorded vote's been called for number 4. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Item number 6, where one conflict has been declared. Those in favor? Oh, sorry, hang on a second. Councillor Gazzola?
No, I want a recorded vote on it. I just want to make a comment that I won't be supporting it. Not so much because it isn't a good deal and all that, but I think our program has been too generous, and we don't appear to be wanting to look at it. This is especially the case here with this particular property, which is as far as I'm concerned, situated on probably the most valuable real estate in the region, and they'll be walking away with a huge grant from the city. I would ask again that we review this, but in the meantime, I won't be supporting this.
Okay. I think the comment was made at the end of the last, at the committee meeting as well, that to review, commitments have already been made, decisions have been made, financial decisions, and that it would be dishonest, actually, to be denying it at this point in time. If you wish to change the policy, then one would bring forward a motion to review the policy. So we're going to be dealing with item number 6, and a recorded vote has been called for. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The balance of the report. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Planning and Strategic Initiatives, Councillor Verbanovich.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Report items 1 through 3, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. And I guess I would look to the ward councillor if there's any new information with respect to number 2, the Walter Street.
But that's been referred to September 15th.
Oh, sorry, yes. My apologies, I mixed up the dates.
Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried.
Thanks.
We've dealt with unfinished business. Is there any new business? Questions or answers? Oh, there are a few, yes. Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
Yeah, recently it's come to my attention some concerns with new subdivisions with respect to schools. And I'm looking to staff to bring back a report in November, understanding that it could take some time, to look at two issues with respect to new developments. One would be to look at it having a school designated for the subdivision prior to submitting building permits. And I understand that's going to be complicated because it's working with the school board and the developers. But recently there's a subdivision that had no school assigned to it when people purchased their home. And they now have found out since moving into their home that they have to go to a school that is quite some distance away. In fact, it's quite far away. On top of that, I think it's important for us to work with and require the developers, if we have the ability to, or at least have staff to investigate this, require developers and the school board to work together to notify residents who have purchased their homes but don't yet live there, and have them be notified if there's any boundary school discussions. So what's happening is these people are purchasing their homes. There's no school assigned to it, so they don't know where their school's going to be. They're making assumptions, and then they're having school boundary meetings, but because they don't live in their homes yet, because they're not built, they aren't invited to those meetings. And I think we have to do something to try and rectify this problem. And I think from a city perspective, it's really starting that dialogue with the school board and developers and trying to ensure that there's some parameters around this in any way that the city can attempt to put boundaries and guidelines in place, I think would really be appreciated from the community, because we've run into some concerns with a new subdivision, and they're going to be going from Ward 5 to Ward 9 to go to school, and that's a significant difference in travel and for parents who have to work with getting their kids to school. They would be bused, but we all know that there's circumstances where buses don't necessarily help with babysitting and different things like that.
Okay. I think that is... I agree with you that we should actually have that information. I would suggest that is it's going to take some time to put that together. So to put some oomph behind the request, I think perhaps you should put that in form of a motion.
Okay.
And I'm sure you'll get support for that, because I know it affects a number of people around the city.
Okay,
so if you would do that.
Yeah.
And seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. Those in favor?
Is there a point of order?
Point of order, yes. This is just asking for a report.
Yeah.
But when we have a report, that will take some effort to put together,
Sure.
rather than just simply some data.
Just a procedural question. I'm totally in favor, but I think a waive of notice of motion is in order.
It would not be necessary.
Oh, just checking, thank you.
No. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. Since I'm taking advantage of the fact that Mr. Whitmer is here tonight, and I know that we were going to be getting a report on the trail gates, I really wanted to ask him if he had any sense of when that was going to be coming. We're approaching the end of, for the majority of us, by the end of September, the end of the cycling season. And we continue to see trail gates closed.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that report is coming on September the 8th.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, could someone update me on what's happening with the community flagpole at Speaker's Corner?
The latest information, I mean, I'm not staff, but the latest information I had was they were intending to get it installed at the same time that the Glockenspiel was going to go in, which was early, by early October, like the end of September.
Okay, thank you.
I do not have a date. That was the latest information I had. I asked that question a number of weeks ago. Mr. Chapman, do you have something more on that?
I was just confirming with Mr. Goodeve, a number of staff have been involved in sorting out the logistics, so we'll undertake to connect back with those staff and email council the estimated timeline.
Councillor Singh.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Whitmer, actually. I've raised this issue before. This is to do with trees that were cut on boulevards in Ward 6, many of which were cut last year and earlier this year. Those trees have since started to regrow and to a considerable height, some of them upwards to almost 8 feet. They have been starting to cause obstruction to the property owners as they're backing out of their driveway, so it's more of a safety concern as well. I know staff did respond to one or two concerns that were forwarded to them, but I wanted to get an update as to a ward-wide concern. When would the trimming happen or the stumping would begin?
Mr. Whitmer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have issued the tender for all stumping within the city. So whatever's out there right now will be done by this fall. If there is a safety issue with respect to visibility, we will take a look at that. So if you could email me those locations, I'll have staff respond. But the sort of the citywide stumping is going to be done, which addresses not only those trees removed through EAB, but also the stumping that was delinquent in the sense of other trees that had been impacted by ice storms or the like.
Okay, no, I appreciate that, and that's great. I will forward you those other streets. Some have many trees cut down, and they're very in disarray, condition of disarray at this point. So I will forward those individual streets to the appropriate staff.
Councillor Vrbanovich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had a request from some residents in my ward who have wanted to put the little libraries and look at and this is from some of the neighborhood groups, to look at putting them into some of our parks as a way for further citizen community engagement and participation in the little community library initiative. I know staff have been looking at it to see how we might be able to accommodate that, assuming the neighborhood associations were paying for building the little library. I'm wondering if staff can maybe just have a one-pager information on the next committee agenda if the item is ready and provide an update on that, because I think it's something that would also interest other members of council.
This definition of this little library was where I'm not sure that everyone is familiar with it.
They're the little wooden libraries that are built and put on a pole, and people have been putting them on their homes.
Which they provide the books for.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And so some of our neighborhood associations are looking at putting that in at some of our parks and so on and maintaining them.
Okay. So I don't think that will require a motion because it's a fairly easy report to get put together. Mr. May, that you wish to speak to him?
Through you, Mr. Chair, only to say, could you clarify with the timing of when that request was for?
I've been working with the neighborhood group, and I was just asking if that can be included as an information item on the next committee agenda.
September 8th.
I think I'll raise the same point I raised earlier, which is I think reports will be due on Thursday. We won't have time to prepare a report. I mean, if it's acceptable to Councillor Vrbanovich, we can either walk it on late or just email an update to council.
Okay, maybe just walk it on late. It's more of an update just to see where it's at and if there's any roadblocks. Like I said, I know staff have been working with the neighborhood groups on that.
So if council's satisfied, we'll put it on the agenda as an information item and then have to deliver it at a later date than the usual timelines.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. There are no other speakers. It's been moved by Councillor Gazzola, seconded by Councillor Ioannidis, that the bylaws be given first reading, but there are some late starters. Christine.
Yes, there are 3 late starters. One relates to Chapter 103 of the Municipal Code, read the Auditor's Report, FCS item number 1, and 2 items relating to PSIC item number 1, an OPA for 150 Aman Drive, and a zone change for the same address.
Those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Glenn Graham that Council resolve itself in the Committee of the Whole. All in favour? Opposed? That's carried. So Councillor Glenn Graham will take the chair from his position.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And may I have a mover for the second reading of the bylaws? Councillor Ioannidis. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Move 3.
Well, we're on 2. So, Councillor Fernandez, any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Dangerous dog, right? Sorry, did you want to say something?
I moved 3.
Okay, all right. Councillor Gazzola moved 3. Any discussion? Councillor Davey?
Thank you. I think I might ask this every year, but is there an estimate or a benchmark of where this typically comes in, and is this outside of the range in terms of the write-offs?
Through you,
Mr. Chapman, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I can't comment precisely on how this compares to prior years, except to say, looking at the detail, I think we are on track for a normal or better than normal year. We've had some very large write-offs in recent years, and I've not seen any of those large single items come through. This seems to be more routine.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Fernandez moves number 4. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 5. Moved by Councillor Davey. Any discussion? Councillor Ioannidis? Oh, okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 6, the CEO approved tenders. Any discussion? Sorry, can I have a mover? There's no motion? Oh, okay. It's information? All right. Thank you. So we don't need to vote on that, correct? Okay. Number 7, Navy League. Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 8 has been withdrawn because I've been informed that there's a new survey with new dimensions for the Crown Plaza sign that needs to be circulated to staff, so that has been removed. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? That's correct. Okay, so that's been removed. Are there any late starters that we need to deal with?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have CSD 14-098, noise exemption request, Remarket Square Garage Rehabilitation Project.
Mr. Turner, would you like to speak to that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I apologize for the late starter. However, the request for Market Square Garage or for the project was just received in my office late Friday afternoon. They're requesting an extension of 4 days. Their noise exemption expired today, and they're requesting an extension to Friday morning to complete the repairs to the garage, at least the phase of it that's going to require overnight work.
Do we have a sense of whether this will go to 7 a.m. or we're not sure at this point?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I spoke to the project manager earlier this evening, and she confirmed that the work will go into the early hours of the morning, but only intermittently. It will not be a constant jackhammering is the source. It won't be constant throughout the evening or throughout the night, but it will go into the early hours of the morning intermittently. She also did confirm that they are very confident that the work will be completed by Friday morning.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? All right. Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any other late starters, Madam Clerk? No? Very good. May I have a mover to rise and report, please? Moved by Councillor Fernandez. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Oh, okay. I thought it reverts back to council. I move that the proceedings. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Gazzola, that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date and attached hereto and forming part of these minutes are hereby adopted and confirmed. All those in favor? Oh, sorry.
It's been moved by Councillor Gazzola, seconded by Councillor Ioannidis, that the bylaws be given third reading. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Fernandez that we adjourn.